My back is tired. Like it. Bam, we're live. I not yesterday, but the day before, I had Brian Friend on midday, and to like just kind of like raise my awareness when I had him on, I did 300 air squats before the show started, and not like crazy fast, but just fast, right? 15 minutes maybe.
Oh.
Like my wife does it in 10 minutes. But anyway, so then in the evening I did 10 burpees on the minute, and then the next minute I did 10 deadlift with 135 pounds, and I did that for 20 minutes. So it ends up being 100 burpees, 100 deadlifts. I did that like at 8 or 9 at night. And then yesterday, just the whole day, do you ever, it's not like so bad where it feels like my back's going to snap, but it's just, my back's just tired. Like I don't want to sit up. Do you know that feeling? I can't tell if the muscle's tired or if it's just crazy engaged. And like I can't tell if it's just completely relaxed and I feel like just a sack of shit, or if it's just so tight I'm trying to lay down and relax. It's weird. I feel like taking drugs.
Sometimes I'll feel like that after like Murph or something. If I haven't done a ton of volume lately, my body will just be like super tight for no reason.
After doing a Murph?
Yeah, or just something that has super high volume.
If I wear a weight vest for too long, I'll have some weird reaction to it. Like when I take it off, I'll be like kind of like you know, you wear the weight vest and you feel the weight of it, and then you have it on for a certain amount of time, and you catch yourself starting to do this shit.
Oh, you're like shrugging
and just tightening and bracing, and it's just like, and then finally when I take it off, I'm oh, it was Philip Kelly. Oh yeah, I need to send Souza it was Philip. This is the dude, Philip Kelly, who sent me that article I was just telling you about. That article is crazy. I didn't hear back from this guy. I wonder if this guy's coming on.
That'd be cool.
If he didn't?
No, if he did.
Yeah. I agree. That would be cool. It is 7 a.m., right? I need to text Souza right now and tell him to schedule Philip Kelly. We need to hear what's going on. Souza. Can we schedule Philip Kelly? Yeah, Philip, I'm going on the 24th. I'm going to some crazy skateboarding camp thing with my kids up in Tahoe for like 4 days. And I wasn't going to do any shows, but we should do a show somewhere between the 24th and the 28th. Because it's doing a show with you will be easy. It'll be fun. Like last night's show was so easy. Holy shit.
Super chill.
Oh my God. Travis is so easy to talk to. You know what's crazy? When I talk to him, I feel like I'm talking to like the gangster version of Jordan Peterson. He's so freaking smart. He is so smart. He understands just how human beings work.
It's kind of crazy because he doesn't really have that. He doesn't really give off that vibe initially.
No. But man, he's like a master of human shit, human behavior. Sure, Sevan, I'll hop on with you for a while your kids are at Woodward. Good dude, Damien. Just taking one for the team. He's in Australia. Is he? I couldn't tell if he's in Australia. I heard it. I played a video of his chick, and his chick spoke Australian. And I got the impression that like maybe he did some sort of residency there. Here's the thing that I was tripping on. There's no way this dude took the injection. There's no fucking way. Hey, if you're a doctor, can you administer your own injection? What's that? What? Because then you could just fire it off onto the floor, right?
Yeah. At least for myself, I'm not a doctor, obviously. I've tried to be like, oh, I'll just do it myself. And they're like, no, you have to have somebody do it for you. Because I administer stuff too, but
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you have to have somebody else administer it for you.
So it's legal for Hiller to shoot himself up with roids, but a doctor can't give himself the vaccine.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems a little backwards.
I'm not at really home sure. In his garage with a dirty needle.
It'd be similar to like somebody administering insulin to themselves, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It'd be like somebody with diabetes administering insulin.
Dylan, Sevan, you see Hiller's video on Annie this morning. When I was, it popped up as I perused over some YouTube station or something. It popped up. I was like, oh Nelly, oh Nelly. There was all sorts of talk about Annie not getting full range of motion at Wadapalooza or something that, and like the people didn't like the way she was doing her burpees and I talked to some people about it. I'm like, you really think that something was wrong with her burpees, synchro burpees? And they're like, well, dude, if it looks different than everyone else's, something's wrong with it. I'm like, I can't get behind that. Everyone talks about the spirit of things and this, like, do you remember like when they were jumping over the bar burpees and someone had changed those weights to those little weights?
Yeah.
Or at the 2008 or 9 games, Matt Mursky was bouncing the clean 155. I'm fine either way. I'm fine busting those people for it, but I'm also not. I just see it as innovation. How about the guy, I just use the Fosbury flop as the example. Everyone was jumping over the high jump like a jackass. And this guy just 1 year showed up at the Olympics. He wasn't even a high jumper. He was an engineer, and he starts doing the, flopping over, turning his back to the bar. It was skipping over the dumbbell during the burpees, and Chase mentioned it during the broadcast. I mean, both her feet were in the air at the same time, right? So do both your feet have to be in the air at the same time, or do both your feet have to come off the ground? Now, let me tell you something. I do a lot of jumping in the garage with my kids, and if they don't jump off the ground with both feet, I tell them, I said, hey, both feet didn't come off the ground at the same time. And it's easier to if you're jumping to a small target, like from like a box onto a balance beam, and you take a step jump instead of a bound jump, it's definitely easier to take the step jump. It's less impressive looking.
It's easier to navigate the obstacle that you're jumping across.
What I wonder what spikes your heart rate more. I'm guessing bounding, right? 2 foot jump.
Yeah, probably the 2 foot jump.
Because the 1 foot jump, if you're jumping with 1 foot, it's just like gravity. You can just lean, and your body kind of, you know what I mean? It's like falling. Jumping with 1 foot instead of 2 feet is just like, I mean, I'm no kinesiologist, but it's just leaning. Hi, Anthony.
Hey, how's it going?
Awesome. Good to see you, brother.
You too. Yeah, sorry, I'm running a second late, but
no worries.
I'm trying to grab something here.
Anthony, is your last name Chaffee or Chaffee?
Chaffee.
Chaffee. Anthony Chaffee. Yeah. Are you related to the arm wrestler Chaffee? I think his name's Daniel Chaffee.
No, I don't know if I've come across him.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, potentially, it's not a common name, so probably somewhere back there.
He's one of the best in North America, maybe top, I don't know, 5 heavyweights. I think his name.
Nice.
No, not Daniel Chaffee. Is it Daniel Chaffee? Are you looking him up, Chaffee? And I know the guest I had on last night, I know has arm wrestled him. Travis has definitely arm wrestled him.
Dave Chaffee.
Oh, Dave Chaffee. Do you know Dave Chaffee?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Hey, are you American?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Oh,
I moved to Australia just a few years ago, just for fun, really.
And you're kind of picking up a little bit of an accent, maybe?
I hope not.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Maybe.
Well, if you're gonna get one, that's the one to get.
Yeah. I definitely didn't want to pick up the Irish accent. That one's a bit too harsh for me.
Did you study over there?
I did. Yeah, I lived over there for 6 years. Yeah, so I did graduate medicine over there, and then worked over there as a doctor for a few years.
And then, did you go back to school? Are you studying to be a neurosurgeon?
So in residency. So it's sort of professional training, I guess you could call it. So yeah, anytime you're going into, like, you finish medical school, then if you want to specialize, then you need to do a residency program.
And what is a neurosurgeon?
So just operating on brains and spines, really. So you're just doing everything. Yeah. So everything on the neurological system.
Wow. Yeah. It's kind of interesting that you're kind of doing, you're going both ways simultaneously. And neurosurgery, surgery performed on the nervous system. All right, especially the brain and spinal cord. Wow, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, right? Because in one way, you're going into some of the most detailed ways of fixing a human being. Most, I don't know, maybe myopic is the word, or focused, or invasive. And then in another way, the other half of your practice is going the least invasive, most I guess here's another way. Let me reframe that. One way, the responsibility is crazy on the doctor, and the other way, it's like, hey, here's the tools, fix yourself.
Well, yeah, well, that's definitely true, and you're right. Neurosurgery is hyper specialized, and you're only working on a very, very small frame of patients, and then people generally subspecialize within that as well. So there might be someone who's just really focused on like vascular neurosurgery, so they're dealing with clipping aneurysms and removing AVM, so like different sorts of vascular abnormalities that can bleed and cause all sorts of problems, or doing bypasses. You have bypass surgery for the heart, where you can do that for the brain as well. And while it's not moving like the heart is and beating and things like that, the vessels are much, much smaller. So you have to do this under a microscope, and you're putting in sort of like 20, 25 sutures that are like literally like the needles are the size of a splinter, and you have this little thread of cobweb coming off of the back of it. So it's a very, very intricate work. And so some people will be even more subspecialized within that subspecialty. And then in functional medicine, healing people just through their diet, it's very broad strokes. I mean, this is just broadly, this is how the body works, and this is how to make it work optimally, and you're in charge of that.
So like maybe someone got a bad batch of government mandated drugs, and they had some clotting, and someone like you could go in and maybe undo the clot.
Yes, sometimes. Yeah. So if someone has a stroke.
Sorry, I just had to stuff that in there. And it was a little forced. I felt like it was a little forced, but I had to. Sorry.
Well, but it's true though. I mean, like, if someone has a stroke or something like that, but like the radiology, they take a lot of the endovascular treatments where they're snaking up little lines and pulling out clots and things like that. But I've seen a lot of patients who have come in close proximity to certain medications and had massive brain bleeds. And,
oh my goodness.
And unfortunately, many of them didn't survive. Other ones had platelet dysfunction that couldn't be corrected. And so they weren't even operable anyway, because they would have just bled out on the table. And other people didn't get hit quite so bad. And thankfully they were able to weather the storm and survive. But no, it's very, very scary. Some of the things you see in medicine, certainly in neurosurgery.
Anthony, where were you born?
California. So I was sort of in Santa Barbara area, and then I moved up to Kirkland, Washington, just outside of Seattle when I was about 10.
Okay. So always on the West Coast. I went to UCSB.
Oh, cool. Yeah, nice.
I did undergrad there for 7 years. I lived in Isla Vista for 10 years.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Yeah, I love that area. Yeah, it always feels like home every time I go back to Santa Barbara.
It was absolutely fantastic. And so you end up. And at what point do you get interested in? What were your parents like? Were your parents hippies?
No, they were very academic. My dad was a physicist. He was a physicist at the Lawrence Livermore Radiation Laboratory in Berkeley.
Yeah,
and worked with Louis Alvarez on his Nobel Prize winning work on subatomic particles and cracking the atoms and studying all that in the bubble chamber. And so he was on the ground doing that. So he was on that team, and then got into, they sort of developed computers. The physicists sort of developed computer science in order to run their experiments. And so he got more and more into computer science, and then started, taking that off as a career. And then my mom was a musician. She was a singer. So she was an opera singer and a classical soprano. And they met while they were at Berkeley. So my mom was doing her undergrad. My dad was doing his doctorate and working at the Lawrence Lab. and they just hit it off, and it was kind of sweet. They met on Valentine's Day 58 years ago, and they've been together ever since. And
Wow.
so yeah, it was very darling. And but yeah, they're both very academic families. So my mom's father was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford and did his PhD at Oxford, did his master's at Harvard, and taught at both, and then taught at Pomona and George Washington. And he was the world's expert on Milton, and wrote his dissertation at Oxford on Milton, and like a work that he published, a few years before he died, that he spent 40 years working on Milton. And so if people are interested in that, look up the work by Dr. Edward Weissmiller. That's really exhaustive. There's no real better study than what he put together. And then, yeah. And so, and my grandmother and he met while they were at Harvard together. And like her father was
she a student there? Was she a student there?
She was, yeah. So my grandmother went to Harvard and met while my grandfather was doing his master's. So he was doing his Rhodes Scholarship at Oxford. And then he was in Germany when World War II broke out. And he had to literally flee across Europe to get away from all the border closures and invasions and things like that. And so the Rhodes Scholarship at Oxford sent everyone home. And so he went back and he ended up doing a master's at Harvard. And that's where he met my grandmother. And then he ended up being a spy in the war and doing counter-espionage and worked there. And he was just funny, just one of those family stories. He was the first ever American spy to turn and work an enemy agent against the enemy. And so he wrote a whole...
Was that your grandmother? Did he turn your grandmother?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, she might think so. Yeah, they ended up getting divorced after about 25 years. But
so wait, so he converted a spy from a German spy into an American spy.
Yeah, he was posing as a Frenchman. He could speak French fluently, and so he was in occupied France and pretending to be just a normal French person, and his job was to work out who the German spies were and to try to turn them against the enemy. And so he was able to do that. And so he was the first.
God, talk about a scary job, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And very crazy. And, he was one of the first, maybe the first American that was trained by MI5 and MI6. And probably because of his connections at Oxford and things like that, they liked him. And so he got along really well with the British sides of things. And so they were doing a lot of work on the counter-espionage side of things. And they did a sort of a story on it when it became declassified after 50 years. And it was called Operation Dragoman. That was the name of it. And there was a guy, I forget his name, but interviewed my grandfather and talked about that whole case and everything like that, and sort of put it together. But it was actually still used. Like his write-up for that was used in the CIA sort of training, spycraft sort of training for quite some time. But probably not used anymore. It's probably outdated, but it was used for quite a while.
Just imagine that you're trying to get someone to flip, but you have no idea. I mean, it's just a liar's game, right? I mean, it's just like I would need a big bag of like MDMA, like as one of my primary tools to give people. What a crazy! I mean, because you could think you're flipping someone, and then last minute they snare you. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, because you really are putting yourself out there, and because you have to sort of let yourself be known that you're, an enemy agent, and so they could easily bust you and kill you or have you tortured. Yeah.
Do you know the story of Otto Warburg over there?
I know who Otto Warburg is, but I don't know his full backstory.
There's this book. I think you would dig it. It's we had the author on. The guy's name is Sam Apple, and the book's name is Ravenous. And it goes into basically, how Otto was a homosexual Jew living in Germany, and Hitler was just killing everybody. Mm-hmm. And especially Jews and homosexuals, but he let this guy live because Hitler had a deep, deep fear of cancer, crazy fear of cancer.
Really?
Yeah. And so, this was the guy, the father of photosynthesis. And this is the guy that discovered basically, I think one of the Nobel Prizes, he won 2 Nobel Prizes. Hitler didn't let him grab the second one, but the first one he won, I think, was discovering that cancer is a metabolic disease. And then, as we've seen, even though he won the Nobel Prize for it, cancer research went in the lost its way and went in the wrong direction.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, he wrote the seminal work. I mean, it was a culmination of like 20 years of work. But in 1951, he wrote a paper called, I believe it was The Origin of Cancer, and it just goes into it. And it just shows how this is a metabolic.
That was actually the name of the. So he's putting his stake in it. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like he put the Otto Warburg flag in cancer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, he just showed that this is where cancers come from. They come from there you go. It comes from a dysfunction of the mitochondria. It's not a genetic disease. There are genetic changes in some cancers. However, if you look at a tumor, not every cell has the same mutations or even any mutations, but they all behave in the same way. They all behave as cancer. And there are cancers that actually have no genetic changes at all, which is quite interesting. Not everybody knows that. Not a lot of doctors know that. And I did a sort of a lecture at our neurosurgical grand rounds a couple months ago, back in October, talking about the metabolic theory of cancer and talking about Warburg's work and other works, such as Professor Thomas Seyfried at Boston College, and just showing all of this and talking about how not all cancers have any genetic changes at all, and quite a lot of people there were like, "Geez, I didn't even know that." But it's
do they say that, Anthony, or do they say, "Dude, this guy's lost his way"?
Yeah. So that was the thing. At the end of the talk, one of the professors of neurosurgery, who was actually professor of neurosurgery at Yale formerly, he, I was talking to him about what I was going to do before that. And he was like, you could tell he was a bit nervous. He was like, okay. All right. Well, okay. Well, this is a sort of a journal club sort of thing. So just make sure that you have, studies and journals and things like that to discuss. And I was like, that's not a problem. I had like 30. And so after I got done with it, he even said, hey, I didn't know what to think about this study, this topic. I thought it was like, wow, this is a little out there, but now that I actually see it and you present it in this way, and there's so much evidence behind it, like, I'm really interested in this, and I think that you should do a study. So it was doing that presentation was really an argument to try to convince my department to let me do a study with brain cancer and dietary changes. So a ketogenic metabolic therapy, which actually Cedars-Sinai Medical Center uses already and has for 15 years or more, and other centers have for a decade or more as well, to treat our GBM patients and do a larger study, because there are a ton of case series and there's tons of smaller studies, even randomized controlled trials with glioblastoma brain cancers, which is the most aggressive form of cancer that we know of. Without treatment, the average life expectancy is 3 months. Ooh. So it's a very, very aggressive. And so they had very, very positive results in these smaller human trials, and astounding results in all the animal models with mice and things like that. But it's still not all that known, because there isn't we have 900 patients and we all did this and it's randomized and controlled and all that sort of stuff. There are randomized controlled trials, but with like 20 people. So, I just proposed to my department, because we get anywhere from 2 to 5 glioblastoma patients a week. We get big numbers, because where I am in Perth, Australia, we are the only neurosurgical center for the entire state of Western Australia, which is about a third of the landmass of Australia. So we get everything. And so we see a lot of these, unfortunately.
Is there a superficial demographic when you see, you're like, yep, it's a Filipino, overweight, 62 years old? Like, is there, or, is there like something like where you see someone and you're like, yep, that you fit the mold?
Yeah. No, I haven't pieced that like major pattern, but most people are overweight, and all will be eating carbs and sugar and things like that. But you can say that about most people.
Yeah, you can say that about anything, right? Broken bones, bad eyes. I mean, like, as soon as you get overweight, the falling down becomes a problem, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
everything exponentially gets like, I don't know if exponential is the right word, but everything gets worse when you're overweight.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, think about this, just metabolic syndrome. If you have metabolic syndrome, you're 6 times more likely to develop heart disease. If you have diabetes, you're 10 times more likely. So these things do compound, and they do go in packs, and if you have different metabolic diseases or metabolic syndrome, you're more likely to get psychiatric disorders and things like that as well. And if you get one psychiatric disorder, you're much more predisposed to getting all the other psychiatric disorders as well. So yeah, they do run in packs. And I think that's because that these so-called diseases or chronic diseases that we're treating, like cancer, like heart disease, like diabetes, autoimmune diseases, even psychiatric diseases, that these are not diseases per se, but toxicities and malnutrition. So a toxic buildup of species inappropriate diet and a lack of species specific nutrition, right? So namely, too many plants that we did not evolve to be able to eat and detoxify properly, and not enough fatty meat, which is what humans are designed to eat.
Hey, do you know that study? My boss, I used to work over at CrossFit, and I work closely with the founder over there, Greg Glassman.
Mm-hmm.
And he would talk about this study. He was a huge fan of Thomas Seyfried. I hung out with him a few times. Greg would have him around. But there was this study that I heard him talk about. I'm gonna screw it up. I apologize for putting you on the spot. But basically, they took cancer. They took cancer cells from mice who had cancer,
mm-hmm.
and I think they took the nucleus of the cancer cell.
Yeah.
And they put it into cells of healthy mice that didn't have cancer. And the cancer didn't spread.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so
it goes. Sorry,
yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, and it went on from there. So they took.
So know that study?
Oh yeah.
God, I love you, Anthony. Yes. You're going to make me seem smart by the end of this show. Go on. Yes, of course. This study. Yes.
So that was a nuclear transfer study. So they took the nuclei from cancer cells with all the genetic changes, right? Because again, not all the cancer cells will have genetic changes. So they took the ones that did have genetic changes, and they put those into a cell that had healthy mitochondria, and they did not behave as cancer. They could even clone like frogs and rats out of them, right? And then they took the mitochondria out of the cancer cells, because while cancer cells don't always have genetic changes, they all have damaged mitochondria, all of them. And that's very important for many reasons. But they took those damaged mitochondria out and put those into a normal cell with normal, healthy DNA, and it did behave as cancer. And they couldn't clone it or anything like that. It just behaved very malignantly, or they just died off. And then they went one step further, and they took like healthy mitochondria and put them in cancer cells. It suppressed the cancer.
Oh shit! Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So to me, I mean, that's QED. Like, thus it is proved. Like, that's just.
What's that mean? QED.
It's Latin. It means thus it is proven.
Thus, yeah. QED. Yeah.
So
of course, Anthony. Yes.
Yeah. So that's what you do, like the end of like a proof or something like that. Like in school, if you did a proof, when you're done, you just tag in QED, which just means the end. And
that is why this is the greatest podcast ever. QED.
Yeah, that's it.
Caleb, let's try to work that into every show after, please.
QED.
QED. You were interviewed the other day by a guy. I saw it posted like 2 weeks ago. And he said he had autism. Somewhere like halfway through the interview, he's like, yeah, I had autism a year ago. I couldn't have done this interview with you. But since I'm on the carnivore diet, my shit's gotten, I unfucked myself. And I saw your face kind of light up like a big smile. And I worked with disabled adults for 5 years very closely. And with a lot of people with autism, their favorite drink was Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
In hindsight, boy, I really screwed that up. But wow, did you know when you went into that interview that guy was autistic?
No, I had no idea. But it was absolutely a delight to see, because you didn't have any idea.
Right.
He was
a little odd in the beginning. He was a little aggressive. I thought like some weird.
Yeah.
But you're right. I wouldn't have guessed autistic.
No. And it's it could be any sort of strangeness could easily be chalked up to the fact that he's a bit nervous doing an interview, which is
Right. Sure.
I was nervous. I was very nervous doing interviews when I first started, and probably still get nervous as well. So I think it could easily be just chalked up to nerves. I certainly didn't think anything more than that, but it was great, and it's something that sort of so nice to see, because this is something that people it can devastate their lives or their children's lives, and people feel very helpless, and it's just like, well, this is just it, and we can just do the best we can. But there's proof positive that you actually have so much more control over yourself and your children's future, especially when they're children, because your brain is still developing. Once your brain is fully developed, well, you can optimize things, and you can help your brain work as well as it possibly can, which is what Jonathan was doing. It was Jonathan Griffiths, but when you're a child and your brain's still developing, that's really what autism is. It's a misdevelopment of the neurons. And there are a number of different reasons why this happens. One of them is actually carnitine. Carnitine is a non-essential amino acid, supposedly, but it is essential for some people. And you actually do benefit from getting more of it in your diet. It doesn't exist in plants. It does not exist in fungus. So you have to get it from meat if you need it. Some kids don't produce enough, or they don't produce any at all. And carnitine is integral for neuronal development. So if you don't have enough carnitine, your brain will not develop properly, and you will develop a certain kind of autism. There's multiple different kinds of autism and causes of autism. That's one of them. This is why is one of the reasons.
Say some crazy shit. I mean, it's not crazy to me. I agree 100%. Like, my wife was a complete vegan vegetarian. She got pregnant. I took her out, and the first thing she did is order a hamburger and scarf it down.
Nice.
Yeah, and she's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I go, I just go with it. But she's Ashkenazi Jew. It's going to take a lot of meat to make a big Jew brain baby.
Yeah,
and she knew it. Thank God. When I hear you say that, I heard you say this yesterday in a podcast. I was like, thank God my wife didn't stick to her vegan roots and she switched to meat. So this thing's important for brain development.
Oh, it's vital. Like you will not develop your brain properly. And while if you have an adequate amount of it, what if you don't have as much as you could have had, and your brain doesn't develop to the extent that it could have? I mean, just because someone's normal intelligence doesn't mean that they are as intelligent as they could have been, which I think is a bit of a crime as well. The average cranial capacity of humans has decreased by 11% since before the agricultural revolution. What's
decreased by 11%? Like the mass of the brain?
Our brain size, yeah. Just the size, the physical volume of it,
Oy.
And we're essentially the same genetically for the last 300,000 years, besides, a few minor details. So our brains absolutely had the same capacity for thought, language, and speech. And yet, we think that we're so much more advanced. We are technologically, but intellectually, they probably were more intelligent than us because their brains were bigger and they're probably better developed. They didn't have to, they didn't have all the technologies that they could just, look things up. They had to remember everything. And so they had to use their brain. They had to do a lot more with a lot less. Back when writing was coming through ancient Greece, there was actually a lot of discussion and argument on, should we adopt this? Because they're saying like, hey, if you just can write something down, then you don't need to remember it. This is going to ruin our memories. Before that, everyone had to have like a perfect memory, and they had to train their memory to make it perfect so that they could just go around and just remember everything. And they were saying like, hey, we shouldn't write things down because we won't need to remember things. I mean, how many phone numbers did you know before you got a cell phone? I knew literally 150. Every now and then I'd write them all out.
Yes.
Wait,
you're not that. How old are you?
43. Just turned 43 on Sunday.
Wow. Happy birthday. And you that's old enough to need to remember phone numbers? I'm 50. I'm 50.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I didn't get a cell phone until I was like 20 something.
Listen, people, did you hear it? Yeah. I have this theory. Like, you want to fuck your kid up, give them a cell phone before they're 15. Your kid's done. He's just going to be a masturbating machine. Don't ever, just do not give it's just the truth.
Yeah.
Don't give your kid a cell phone and sign them up for CrossFit And I know it's a really low bar, but your kid will turn out 98% better than it will be in the 98th percentile automatically right there. Definitely. No cell phone, CrossFit. It's that easy these days. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I know all my phone numbers from when I was a little kid, all my friends' phone numbers. Now I don't even know my mom's number, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to write down my parents' number just the other day, and I'm like, oh shit, what is it? And like I ended up like piecing it out, but it was a close thing. Like I wasn't, it should have just been like that. You know, I remember my old house number. I remember my house number from California.
Yeah.
You know,
all that stuff.
Yeah. All that, but everything else, no.
Hey dude, I don't even remember street names anymore. Because when I go to a new area, I use the MapQuest type or whatever that thing is, the Google Map. I showed my age, the map app. And now, like, my exit at my house, I know it's like I don't even know exactly what that sign looks like. I don't know what exit number it is or anything, even though I know it says it huge on there.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I always go by Google Maps, and you know, especially when I was going around Europe, you know, you had to sort of do that in Europe because they actually don't necessarily even have like the street signs up, and so they're like, oh yeah, you want to, and so like back, like 'cause I was traveling Europe, you know, playing rugby, you know, before iPhones and things like that. So I actually had to go on MapQuest and like have like
and print out the paper. Do you remember when you'd print it out and you'd have it like with you and shit?
Yeah, just walk around like an asshole and try to look for signs.
Yeah.
And like half the time there were no signs. There were no signs for these streets. So you just had to know that this street was named this. And that was very difficult. And so as soon as the map apps came, I was all over those things. And you know, my dad never uses those. And so he still knows all the street names, all the ways to go. And so he'll tell me how to get somewhere. It's like, what you want to do is you want to go down here, you go down 3 miles, you take this exit, you take right. I'm like, Dad, I am not going to even try to remember any of this. I'm just going to get the address. I'm just going to put it in. Thank you.
Hey, I wonder what the mechanism is. Wow, this is way off subject. I wonder what the mechanism that makes some people be able to do maps and some people not. Like when I was a little kid, I loved maps, like paper maps you get from AAA. I loved maps. But have you ever been with someone like your wife or something, and they just can't do maps?
Definitely.
They just don't do maps.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's that spatial reasoning and things like that doesn't come as easily for everyone.
Spatial reasoning. I like this.
And
like I never even trust the map. As soon as it gives me the directions, I zoom out as far as I can to see the whole route.
Right.
And 1 out of 10 times you see something that like the map's done wrong. You're like, why is it doing that?
That's a that's a good point. Like I stopped using Waze. Like my brother would use this app Waze, and he said, "Oh, it's really, really good. It gives you all the shortest ways to get there." But it would never show me the overall route. It would just say, "Be like, yeah, go this way." And so I don't even know if it's going to the right place.
Right.
Because and sometimes it didn't. You know, sometimes it's just like whatever address, it just like clicked it over into like some other city somewhere, and I show up somewhere. I'm like, where the hell am I?
That just happened to my wife's mom. That just happened to my mother-in-law. Yep.
Yeah. So like you need to see that overview because like, okay, yeah, I'm going to the right place. It didn't, you know, mess up somehow. And so, yeah, I think Waze can do that now, but I just basically wrote them off years ago just because I couldn't do that.
Spatial reasoning skills. Spatial reasoning is the ability to visualize and manipulate objects in the mind. Spatial reasoning is a skill needed for not just mathematics. An example of spatial reasoning is being able to look at a shape and imagine what it would look like from another angle. Oh yeah, I've heard dogs don't do this so good. Spatial reasoning also includes the ability to visualize what a 2-dimensional net might look like as a 3-dimensional object. Oh, that's above my grade. But yeah. They do those tests like with pets, right? Like something walks behind something and they have like some test to figure out whether the pet recognizes like if it went behind something or if it just disappeared.
Okay. Yeah.
They always try to make dogs look dumber than they are. I don't think dogs are that dumb.
No, definitely not. And just messing with the poor dogs. Like they're just there to love you and to like, you know, help you. And then just people just messing with them, you know?
I think that they sense stuff with other shit. Like obviously their smell and sound that accommodates their lack of spatial reasoning. I like this. I have a doctor on and then I charge people for questions and you're just left with nothing. Philip Kelly, Philip was on my show, just as a little background. He got COVID really bad. He was not vaccinated. had some other complications, and he was in the hospital for 40 days. Lucky to
Oh, wow.
live. Yeah, lucky to
Yeah.
live. A
Oh, I'm glad he's
CrossFitter.
around.
Yeah, I don't know a single. I think I've only known one CrossFitter, and on the entire planet, he was overweight, who died from the virus. But this guy survived. Anthony, in your opinion, how beneficial can carnivore diet be for COVID survivors with pulmonary fibrosis?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be optimal for anybody in any situation, because I really do believe that this is our optimal diet, that this is the most beneficial diet for humans to be on, because it is our biologically appropriate species specific diet. So whatever stage of life you're in, it's going to optimize your health. There is such thing as damage done, and you can call, when you get to the point of fibrosis, that's permanent scarring. You're really not going to be able to
What is that?
heal. Pulmonary fibrosis just refers to scarring, and so scarring is a permanent damage or destruction, and they have to rebuild scar tissue. You're not really going to be able to replace all that scar tissue. Maybe soften, maybe fix some of it, but like when your liver is cirrhotic, when it's scarred up, that part of the liver is dead and it's not going to come back. The other parts that are still around, maybe you can optimize those. And so the same thing for your lungs. But at the same time, it is going to optimize your situation. So if you're in a bad situation, you have pulmonary fibrosis or you have other ailments, it's going to put you in the best position that you can be in any way. And so, when you are sort of knocked back a bit by a serious illness like that, you really don't want to be anything but optimal. And so I think that it's probably more important for people such as yourself to get on this, because you really do need to be at your peak game.
And by the way, that's why the only thing in my life that I've ever done that I regret is the 12 million bong rips I took that made me feel like my lungs were on fire. Yeah. Because all I can ever do now is wonder what I could have been. Do not burn shit and inhale it. Don't be a fucking idiot. Don't do any drugs. I'm telling you, I know I sound old, but like all you can do at 50 now is wonder, God, how much better of a CrossFitter would I have been if I wouldn't have had a bong smoking contest for 3 years of my life.
Yeah.
3 years. So you eat meat and water.
Yeah.
And you're like, and you have nice skin and big eyes and you're buff and you're handsome and you're smart. Right? You're those things.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. That's all you eat, just meat and water.
Yeah.
Some salt. Maybe like if you're going to go big, you throw some salt on there.
Yeah. So just salt to taste. I've used less and less salt as I go. I don't always use salt. I find that sort of the less I use, the less I want to use. And there are quite a lot of people that have just, completely done away with salt altogether, and they feel a lot better for that. And they feel that you get even an extra leg up when you just get rid of all the salt completely. I haven't done that yet. I haven't tried that completely yet, but I do find that I don't need nearly as much salt. But I just feel amazing, and I've been doing this. I started doing this 23 years ago now. And I was doing that for sort of 5-6 years in my early 20s. And then I sort of fell off of it because I didn't really realize how significant what I was doing was. And then I just got back into it last sort of 5-6 years. And then I really understood why I was doing it, and that this was actually the reason I felt better than I'd ever felt in my entire life in my early 20s was not because I was in my early 20s, but because I was in my early 20s and eating like this. And then in my late 20s, as a professional athlete playing professional rugby at the top levels in the US and Canada and in Europe, I did not feel as good as I do now in my 40s eating a carnivore diet. And I have better exercise tolerance. It's way easier to stay trim. Like I don't even have to try to stay in shape. Like I am always at the same body fat percentage. I just never go above 10% body fat. And then when I'm working out and I'm training and lifting, it usually goes down to around 6 without even trying. And I've never found it easier to put on muscle either.
Yeah, this is crazy. Have you ever read that book, Stranger in a Strange Land by
No, I don't think so.
Heinlein, Heinlein, LAN. You kind of are giving me that vibe. Hey, would you ever do what do you think about that Neuralink? That would you? I mean, since you're going to be a neurosurgeon, you think you'll be putting computer chips in people?
I mean, if they want them, you know. But
this is a great audiobook. But if I don't read a lot of fiction, but man, this book's insane, dude. This book is so fascinating. They say it's sci-fi, and he was in the same kind of cohort as Alfred Hitchcock, Ray Bradbury, and the Scientology guy. I think they were all, you know.
Robert Heinlein. He's the one that wrote Brave New World, wasn't he?
No, who was that?
No,
that was before him.
1987. Yeah. Oh, way before him. Yeah.
But this book basically is about an alien that comes from another planet, and he's trying to figure out what the hell's going on here on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that sticks out to me the most is he says, "What a shame!" He says we're the only creatures in the cosmos that can be enlightened and also still procreate. That all the other enlightened creatures in the cosmos, in order to be enlightened, they don't procreate, and that we're totally fucking it up because we get both. But because of jealousy and all of these things and our unchecked emotions, we're screwing it all up. But there's some fascinating ideas presented in the book, and it's read so well. But the guy basically, what made me think of you is the guy's basically whatever he puts his mind to, his body just does, kind of like. He's a mind over matter guy, not in the Marvel sense where it's just pulling down skyscrapers, but it's some cool stuff. Who introduced you to the 20 years ago? That seems like you're a little ahead of your time. Were you just dabbling in Atkins or something?
No, it was sort of completely circuitous. I was taking cancer biology in my undergraduate degree, and I'd taken biology and I'd taken botany, so these things sort of were already there. That I mean, literally learned in 7th grade that plants and animals are in an evolutionary arms race. Plants becoming more and more poisonous, so less and less animals can eat them, and so they can survive and thrive. And then animals becoming more and more adapted to specific plants with specific poisons, so they can detoxify those poisons safely, and they can eat that, and they can survive and thrive. Like, a koala eats eucalyptus, nothing else eats eucalyptus, right? But they don't eat. But koalas don't eat anything else because anything else will actually cause them to be, cause them quite a lot of harm and actually kill them. So, that was literally how that was explained to me in 7th grade. And then
private school? Was that a private school?
No, that was
public
school. Normal school. Yeah, that was in Lake Washington School District. And
you remember the teacher's name?
What was her name? I don't remember off the top of my head, but
kind of cool. She gave that to you. Wow.
Yeah, well, that was it. It was a good school district. The public school district in that area in Kirkland, Washington was actually very good, and so that was lucky. But when I took cancer biology, and I understood because I'd taken botany classes and things like that, and I understood that plants are stationary; they can't run away or fight back, and all living things have a defense. And while animals can run away or fight back, that's their defense. That plants can't, and so they have to use other defensive means, and one of those means is being poisonous. They have a lot of poisons that they can that they can excrete, and they can also bind up their nutrients in ways that animals can't break down, and they don't have the right enzymes to break up or get good nutrition from. So I knew all that, and then I was taking cancer biology, and we learned day one that again plants defend themselves by using chemical deterrents, and that some of these things are actually mutagenic and carcinogenic. That's on the WHO website. The WHO, who pitches a plant-based diet, they have a whole page about all the toxic elements in plants, and how how poisonous these things are, and how you have to, and then talking about how these things can kill you or cause cancer. And so we were learning this from a cancer perspective, and so we were looking at carcinogens. And so we learned day one that Brussels sprouts had 136 already identified human carcinogens.
Oh, and no. I love a Brussels sprout.
Yeah. But do you love them raw without
No,
any sort
not
of
so
dressings or
much.
anything?
Not so
Yeah.
much.
So
I
that's
mean,
the
I've
thing.
eaten some raw, but I prefer them
Yeah.
actually mushy, like mashed potatoes. Like
Mm.
you can't even tell they're Brussels sprouts anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
Butter.
usually the thing. We cook them, we put butter on them, we put
Yeah.
cheese and salt and pepper and
Salt,
things like
more
that.
salt, please. Yes.
Yeah, and so that's changing and adulterating the taste, and what that taste is, that bitter taste
Yeah.
is a warning signal, right? Your
Right.
brain and your tongue are sophisticated machines, and they can actually identify harmful chemicals, and so that's actually a warning system. It's saying, hey, this is bad for you. That's what that bitter taste is. It's not just bitter to, like, piss off kids, when you want them to eat their vegetables. It's there to tell you, don't eat this. This is harmful. Deer don't go around eating the shitty tasting leaves. They eat the leaves that taste good. And so they don't have
The baby leaves, the new growth.
potentially, yeah, and some of those baby leaves don't have as much toxins as well.
It's like
But
that in grapevines. I have grapevines all over my house, and if I pick just the baby leaves, I can eat them, but the big leaves taste like ass.
yeah, yeah. So that's the thing, and so that's what you're tasting. You're tasting more defense chemicals that your body's trying to warn you away from. Now, you can cook them like a potato. I don't know if you've ever bitten into a raw potato. I have when I was a kid. It's disgusting. It is so bitter. And I remember even just looking at it and just knowing that it was going to taste bad. And then it did. But we cook it and it sort of denatures these things. And so now they're sort of off the register. They're just, our brain's trying to look it up and like, yeah, we don't know what the hell this is. And so it just tastes bland. Doesn't really have any flavor. And that's what a baked potato is. It doesn't really have any taste to it. But that doesn't mean
jicama's like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
you still remember what vegetables taste like? Like,
I do,
like when
yeah,
I say jicama, do you remember what it tastes like?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but with like potatoes, they have a ton of toxins in them, like solanine. The potatoes are not in the nightshade family, like tobacco and belladonna, but also potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, all capsicums, things like that. And so they have solanine and other things in it that are quite harmful to people. And so you can cook that, and that can denature it so your brain doesn't recognize it, but that doesn't make it go away, and it doesn't make them safe. Some things you can denature through heat, but not all of them. Some of them just change it enough so you don't really taste them. And then you cover it with butter and sour cream and bacon, and people say, oh, I love potatoes. And it's like, well, you probably don't. You love the bacon and the butter and the sour cream and the cheese.
Mm-hmm.
But you try eating a potato on its own, it's disgusting. You try eating a Brussels sprout on its own, it's disgusting. People, I mean, there's some weirdos out there that like raw Brussels sprouts, but I think of it more as something along akin of Stockholm syndrome. They fall in love with their abuser. They've been told since they were a kid.
Yes.
Yes. They've been told that since they were a kid that this is really good for you. This is good for you. This is good for you. Eat it. And then you get in your head, okay, oh, this is good for me. This is good for me. And it's just like, but you had to condition yourself to do that. And maybe there's some people that naturally like it, but most people don't. The vast majority of people find that bitter taste quite unappealing. And that's what it is. It's you're tasting bad chemicals. So we were learning that about Brussels sprouts, mushrooms, spinach, kale, broccoli. All of these things had dozens, if not over 100 known human carcinogens in them. And they're quite abundant. There was work from Professor Bruce Ames from UC Berkeley, where back in 1989, he published his works looking at the amount of naturally occurring toxins and pesticides in the plants that the plants produce in order to stop, animals and insects from eating them. And he found that there were over 10,000 times the amount of naturally occurring poisons in plants and vegetables than the pesticides we were spraying on them industrially.
Crazy.
And that they, were 1,000 times more likely to cause cancer than the pesticides that we were spraying on them. Right. So, this is why we still have pesticides.
God, that's so hard to believe. I'm so programmed not to believe that. That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing.
The one caveat to that, I'd say, is that we weren't using glyphosate at that point. I think that came in the 90s.
What is that? Some sort of bug spray?
Yeah, it's Roundup. Yeah, that's what they use in
yeah,
all the
yeah,
GMO
yeah.
sort of crops.
Oh,
And that's poison.
these fucking idiots.
Yeah.
I live in
Yeah.
California. Anytime since I've been a little kid, anytime I've seen someone spraying poison on the cracks of their driveway, I want to get out and beat them with a bat. Sorry, my wife's going to hate me for saying that. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What do you really think? You really are spraying bad shit that kills plants on your property? Just go over and pull it out, you ding dong.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's the thing. It's like to spray this instead of just reaching down and
Yeah,
pulling it out.
God, it's crazy.
You know? Yeah,
It's like spraying Raid in your house. Listen, you knuckleheads. If it's killing the ants, it's killing you too. What are you doing? You bought a can of poison and brought it into your house?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
You know what I just saw today? I just saw a video. They were talking about that as well. They were talking about Pam, you know, that sort of spray that you put on a pan or whatever, so it's non-stick. And like, oh, look how great this is.
Yeah.
And you think it's just like, you know, some vegetable oil and like some compressed air. Turns out it's not compressed air. They use butane and propane, right? So you're literally spraying lighter. And this is why, and I've done this as a kid. You know, you take like a lighter and the pan just, I'm like, that can't be good, you know? And that's
one of the greatest activities as a young man, by the way. Yeah. That's what makes boys boys. If you haven't done that, you're not a boy.
Yeah.
A can and a lighter. Remember Banaka even? You would spray Banaka.
Yeah.
Get a light torch.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's it. Propane and butane. And you're spraying this on your food and you're cooking with it. How is that a good thing? You know?
Nice, Caleb. Hey, dude, you know what's crazy, Anthony? Is like if you watch like all these vlogs from that's a nice rig that guy's got. That looks dangerous. He's got the lighter actually strapped to the can. That's way advanced.
That's a whole flamethrower.
Yeah, that's a future problem right there. Kid, join the military or else you are gonna go sideways. You see all these athletes in my community and they have these vlogs and you always see them doing that, spraying their pan before they cook their 4 eggs and their bagel slice and I'm like, I always think, God, there's nothing in your brain that tells you if it's in a can, you shouldn't eat it. Like everything that when I see a can, I'm just like, my brain's like, dude, don't eat what's in there.
Yeah.
No matter what the can is.
Yeah. Where was that 50,000 years ago?
Yeah.
You know? I mean, if we're doing this intelligently, you know, we should look at our biological past and see like, hey, what were we eating? What did we have available? And like, even if you say that, okay, well, we were eating plants and vegetables. Well, which ones? Because none of the plants and vegetables that we have access to now existed 50,000 years ago. None of them. You know, they've all been, you know, genetically engineered in one way or the other. None of these things existed back then. And in fact, no, we weren't really eating plants back then at all. Maybe sometimes if we had to because we were starving or used medicinally, but the vast majority of what we were eating was meat. And, you know, and then people would say like, oh, well, maybe we just weren't thriving, not doing well, and people dying of heart attacks and obesity at, 25. I was like, that's garbage. That is so stupid. You know, like you are not
like in the past, like people are like that must have been happening during the caveman era. Like, well, Dr. Anthony, the average age of death in 1200 BC was actually 40 years old.
Yeah.
That's because they were getting eaten by lions. Right.
Yeah. Well, and in 1850 in America as well, because the thing is what the average life expectancy is the average life expectancy from birth. And until the 20th century, when the OBGYN specialty, came about and became actually, very, beneficial to the human race, the infant mortality rate was like 3 and 5.
Wow.
You have to live pretty damn long. Those other two guys have to live pretty long time to get the average from birth up to 36.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what it was in 1850 in the US. It was average from birth was 36. But they weren't retarded back then, which people hear.
One of my favorite words. He's speaking clinically. No one get triggered. He's a doctor. He can use that.
Well, it's Latin. It means slowed. It's like when you're taking chemistry, you put in something to retard the reaction. I refuse to sort of play with those games. Like this is a word, it has meaning, and it actually is a medical term. You're right. It's sub-average intelligence, and people use the word idiot, moron, imbecile, and things like that.
Imbecile's great. Imbecile's great.
And they don't bat an eye. But what those words mean is that you are mentally retarded to a specific IQ range. So a moron actually denoted an IQ between 50 and 70. Imbecile was 30 to 50.
Yeah.
And idiot was 0 to 30. That's
Wow.
why idiot is the most commonly used one. It's the worst you can call
Yeah.
someone. It is the
Yeah.
lowest intelligence possible. And that's why it was so popular. So all the best insults were formerly medical terms, like cretin. Oh, you cretin. That's actually a medical condition. It's congenital hypothyroidism. So
It's not like the people from the island of Crete who are like inbred or something.
no,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And well, maybe the sort of origin of the name might come from, I don't know, but that's what that cretinism is congenital hypothyroidism. So if the mom is hypothyroid during pregnancy, or the kid or the kid is still has low thyroid as well, they develop very differently. They're short stature, they don't grow as big, they have very specific facial deformities, and they're intellectually impaired significantly. And so, that's an actual term, and people use that as an insult, and that's why they use it. But yeah, so, previously, like in the 1800s, they thought about this rationally. And yeah, there you go. And
Wow.
yeah. And so in the 1850s, I'll give an aside with this. Mark Twain popularized the saying, there are three kinds of lies. There are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. And so these are all lies with statistics. So they say like, oh, well, people, the life expectancy was 40 or whatever it was. That's a lie of statistics, because yes, that's technically correct from birth, but we're not talking about from birth. We're talking about how long do people actually live, right? If they're not killed by a lion or a war or something like that, if they just died of old age. And so in the 1800s, they looked at that. And so there's census data, available all the way back to 1850, that every decade they look at this, and they don't just look at the average life expectancy from birth. They look at it every 10 years. So average life expectancy from 0 is 36 in 1850. But at 10, it was 56, right?
Yes.
So if you made it to 10 years old, on average, you'd make it to 56 years old.
Yes.
And it went up from there. So people have made it to adulthood, they generally lived about as long as they do now. Pretty close.
Yeah, there's great stuff like that. Thomas Sowell, Soul, yeah. He has some great statistics on that, right? Like the wealthiest people in the United States are Jews, and the poorest were Puerto Ricans. Jews made $100,000 a year. Puerto Ricans made $25,000 a year. And then he goes, but if they tell you that, and they never tell you that the median age of a Jew in the U.S. is 50 years old, the median age of a Puerto Rican is 25-year-old. I mean, when I was 25, I was fucking homeless. Now I'm 50 and I'm rich. It's like, what the fuck? Like, you cannot compare. I mean, what were you doing at 25, doctor? Like,
right?
Yeah, you were like checking your pocket to see if you could buy food for your next to do your next rugby practice, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy what you can do with statistics. The manipulation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Thomas Sowell is the best for that. He's like, no one digs into the bedrock of what's actually going on, and showing you like, this is what's really happening. One of the ones that I really like to throw in the face of other doctors, things like that, because people just buy this nonsense. And there's a few of them, but the one in particular that he pointed out was infant mortality rate. They're saying that, in America, everyone tries to trash the American healthcare system because they're trying to tear it down and put in a governmental healthcare system, which I can tell you, because I've worked in government healthcare systems in Europe and now Australia. They are horrible. Okay. I've been doing this for over a decade in these systems. It's
everyone we have on the show, for the vast majority, say if you're in Canada or the UK right now, you're screwed. They said it's basically a collapse.
Well, it's in a permanent state of collapse. It's just limping along, but it's just, they're just trying to put on patches and things like that. And then just what they do is they just delay things, and you're waiting. I mean, literally. So I'm in neurosurgery. You have people that come in for like a non-emergent sort of situation, but they're in horrific pain, and they have some pinched nerve in their back, and they can't walk because of the pain. They can't work. They haven't worked in 5 years, and you're not allowed to see them. It literally, the average wait time right now is 4.5 years just to see them
in the UK,
in the office, in Australia.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So
But
4.5 years.
But it's free, Anthony. But it's
Well, that's
free.
it. Yeah, well,
It's free.
you get what you pay for.
FREE.
Yeah. Well, you know, and that's the thing too. You know, you see these people, it's 4.5 years wait time to get in to see us, right? And then it's going to take months. We're going to try different sorts of treatments. We're going to get another MRIs and all these sorts of things. And then we'll say, okay, well, you know, we think that surgery is a good idea. Well, then they go on the wait list for surgery. It can take a year or two to get surgery, right? So the real times, there are people waiting 6 years and they're not working the whole time, right? So even if you made minimum wage, right, it would be in your best interest to take a loan and get that surgery. It's $12,000 to $15,000 to get like a lumbar laminectomy, you know, and just decompress those nerves, right? And yet these people are, you know, some of these people are like have really high paying jobs, like labor jobs in the mining industry, which is like a big industry in Australia. They're making 150 grand, you know, pushing 200 grand a year, like working in the mine sites, and they don't want to spend 12 grand getting a surgery. Like, oh, I you know, I can't afford that. It's like, you can't afford not to. You know, you're losing out on 200 grand a year for 6 years. You're missing out on all the promotions, all the pay, and just being a functional human being. And so, you know, and it makes no sense. I mean, it makes no sense for the system either, because the system is now not collecting taxes, and tax rates huge here. It's like 50%. So they're, you know, the government's losing out on, you know, 80, 90 grand a year on these guys.
Right.
And they're paying 60 grand a year in disability. How is this a workable system? All just because they don't want to pay 15 grand for a surgery. I mean, they're both losing out in that scenario.
Do you tell them, hey, dude, like, while you're waiting, you might as well cut out all inflammation? What's that look like, doctor? Well, that's a 3-day water fast and then immediately just start eating steaks.
Yeah, well, you know, and some people, yeah.
Can you tell them that, or would you lose your shit? Would you end up like who is the guy over there, Noakes? Would you end up like no? Noakes was in South Africa, right?
No, he was in Tasmania. Yeah, so he was Australian. Oh no, sorry, Noakes was in South Africa. And
yeah, they tried to take away his yeah. I mean, they ruined his life. I mean, yeah, they fucked up his life. I mean, basically, they put him in the system and tried to take his medical degree away because he said carbs were bad.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how crazy is that? Like what?
Crazy.
You know, what's your dog in this fight? And he was like, no, God damn it, you will not, you know, talk shit about my lovely carbs. Like, what the hell kind of sense does that make?
Crazy.
But they do it to a lot of people. There was a Dr. Gary Fettke here in Tasmania, and he is an orthopedic surgeon, and he was just basically telling people, was like, hey, you know, you can help yourself by going on a ketogenic diet, on a low carb diet, and here's all the evidence, here's all the background on it. And so they did, and they were benefiting themselves. You'd think the system would like that, because he was saving the hospital system and the government literally millions of dollars a year in unnecessary surgeries that now did not need to happen. And these people were just better, so they didn't need these massive joint replacements. And so, you know, he's actually doing a good thing for his patients and a good thing for the system. You'd think he'd be, you know, get a statue made of him, but no, they tried to run him out, and they tried to take his license away. They just went after him, and they even because I've actually spoken to him, and he was saying that they said that they wanted him to settle, and they wanted him to pay like hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. They wanted to like take his license away for a few years, and then do this old mea culpa sort of thing. And one of the conditions was, they wanted him to sign this thing, and said, even if a ketogenic dietary approach becomes mainstream practice, you still can't recommend it. You can't. And so he was just like, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. And he took them to the Supreme Court, and he won, but it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of his life. And
you know, I think Wikipedia pulled down his page too.
Oh, really?
He's part of this whole group of people. Fettke, Gautier. I think maybe Zoe Harcombe. Do you know who that is, out of the UK? I think they pulled down her. Wikipedia. So like Osama bin Laden and Hitler have wiki pages, but the wiki is going through and canceling these people who are the low carb guys.
Yeah, they're probably sponsored by Nestle or something like that. So they're like, oh, nope, get them out. Yeah.
It's see if you can find Gary Fettke's wiki page, Caleb. God, what
Fettke, Fettke.
Oh, I would have thought there was an H in there or something. Yeah, what a crazy world. Someone in the comments said homegrown Brussels sprouts are fantastic. You did say something in this interview. I heard you talk about if you are going to eat tomatoes, I'm paraphrasing, grow the plant at your house and let it get really ripe. And it's funny you say that, because I have tomatoes growing in my yard almost all year round. I'm in California. They basically and they just reproduce. They're like a weed back there now. And we never pick them and bring them in the house, but every once in a while I'll go out there and there'll be one just like barely hanging on, and I'll pluck it off and eat it. And it's so darn good. Why is in the tomato in particular, why is it better to do vine ripe tomato?
So, a fruit is obviously a vessel for the seed, right? And the plant, while it wants something to eat the fruit and then move the seeds, it doesn't always want you to eat the fruit. There are plenty of fruits that are deadly poisonous that will kill you because they want a specific animal to move that seed, and the seeds will germinate in the gut, like the cassowary bird in the tropics.
Castle what bird?
Cassowary bird. It's like a small emu looking thing. And they're frugivores. They just eat these fruit. And so there's a whole bunch of different tropical fruits and berries that they eat. And they're the only ones you can. And
that's a nice bird.
Freaky looking dinosaur.
Wow.
And so the fruits that they eat only germinate in their gut. And if they don't get eaten by a cassowary bird, they don't germinate. And so it's imperative that they do. So they have this sort of symbiotic development together. And so they are deadly, deadly poisonous to any other animal. Like you eat one of these fruits, oh, it's a tropical fruit. Yeah, you'll die if you eat it. And there's about 150 of them that the cassowary bird eats that will kill you. And there's a ton of fruits like that. But there are fruits that we can eat. There are fruits that are more available. But again, tomatoes are nightshades, and nightshades are just inherently more toxic to humans. They're very toxic to dogs and things like that. So the fruit is going to be even more toxic when it's not ripe, because the seed's not ready to go. So and it's going to be like hard, and it's going to be sour or bitter or something like that. I mean, think of an avocado. Like most people like avocados, right? But when it's not ripe, it's rock hard because it does not want things to eat it, right? So tomatoes the same way. So it was sort of folklore.
You don't eat avocado either?
I don't. I do like avocado, but no, I don't eat them. Okay. No. And I mean, the reason being is because there are going to be some things in it, and for the reasons we talk about, they're probably not all vine ripened or tree ripened,
right? And
that matters. But they'll still have some in there, and either way, it's not going to be as good as a steak.
Dude, I have a bunch of avocado trees. Someone can unfuck me in the comments if they want, but I don't think an avocado ever ripens on a tree. My avocados, if I don't pick them, when they go from hard to rotten, basically because they start turning, and I am just 3 miles off the ocean, but they start to turn black if you leave them on too long. Like, I've never picked an avocado and just ate it. It has to be picked, brought in the house, and then a week later you eat it.
I have my grandmother lived in Montecito, and she was up in
Ojai, like right outside of Montecito. They got amazing avocados. So you would just pick them off the tree and you could eat them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But as far as the tomatoes are concerned, they're going to be more toxic if they're not ripe. And so this was something that's like folklore knowledge that green tomatoes were toxic. That was something that people know. It was like, don't eat green tomatoes, they're poison, right? And then people say, oh, well, that's crazy, and that's just them saying that. But you eat a lot of these things and you will know about it. So when it vine ripens, now the seeds are getting ready to go, to be germinated, and so the plant's sort of pulling out some of the toxins to make it, less toxic to animals, so it can encourage them to eat it. But there have been studies done looking at tomatoes specifically, and they found that if you pick them while they're green, they don't actually get rid of the poisons, because the poisons get sucked back into the plant. And whereas if you just pick it off there, they just stay there, right? And I think that probably has a lot to do with the taste, where you pick a tomato early, it just doesn't taste as, it's just not as exciting as like a fresh vine ripened tomato. It has that really like amazing smell. It's like, wow, it has a nice fresh taste and everything like that.
Right.
So it's going to have less of these toxins in them. And then the original usages of tomatoes, they vine ripen them, and then they blanched the skin, right? So they dipped them in boiling water, and they were able to peel off the skin, and then they took the seeds out, right? Because the plant may want you to eat the fruit, but it does not want you to eat the seeds. And so the seeds are a plant's baby. Everything protects its baby more than anything. That's generally where you'll find the highest concentration of toxins is in the seeds. And so, that's what the original spaghetti sauce and pasta sauce was they took the skin off. That's barrier protection. And that's where a lot of the concentrated toxins are, to stop animals and insects from eating into it and boring into it. And you take out the seeds as well, because that's going to be a protected part of the plant as well. And so they just used the other bits that were vine ripened, and this significantly reduced the toxicity of that. And so that's why you would do that.
God, that sounds laborious.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And this is why they peeled potatoes. And now they're saying, oh, no, don't peel the potatoes. That's where all the vitamins are. It's like, yeah, it's where all the poison is too, And so, there were reasons people did these things for hundreds of years.
I don't want to forget to tell you guys this. I should have opened with this. There is a video that Anthony has on YouTube. It's called Carnivore for Beginners. I wish I would have seen this video 20 years ago. It's called Carnivore for Beginners, How to Start a Carnivore Diet with Tips. It's on his YouTube station, Carnivore for Beginners, and then you can just type in his name also. You can just go to if you basically just type in Anthony Chaffee. Did I say it right? Chaffee?
Yeah, Chaffee.
Chaffee. Chaffee. Mm-hmm. This is a great video. This is I watched this last night at 1.25 speed while standing on my balance block. This is a great video. And even if you don't want to do, this will kind of inspire you. I encourage everyone, even if you think this is fucking crazy, to try this. It's your body. Why not do some laboratory stuff with it. We had Chris Wark on the show. Chris Beat Cancer. Do you know who that is?
No, I haven't come across him.
Okay, the name of his book is Chris Beat Cancer. He was 20 years old or 23 years old, got diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and he went on a pure basic. I don't think he's vegan anymore, but he went on a pure vegan diet, right? Mm-hmm. And just basically just started just blending vegetables and fruits and just consuming them. Mm-hmm. And he cured himself of his cancer. He basically opted out of all the medical procedures. And and I've gone the other way. I've had Brian Johnson on here, the Liver King. I've had Paul on here. I had a bunch of people who've cured themselves of autoimmune diseases. Like this one guy, I don't know if you've seen him on Instagram, but he's the raw meat guy, and he just goes to Whole Foods and just buy an octopus and eat it. And his stories, his before and after pictures are nuts. He was a pimple. I mean, he was grotesque looking, and he said he said no t-shirt lasted him more than 4 weeks because it would get so many blood stains and pus stains on it that he'd just have to throw it away. Yeah. And he had that for 10 years of his life, and after 4 weeks of eating just dead animals, cured.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's awesome. Poor bastard.
But what about when you hear things like this guy, and I'm sure you've come across them. You have stage 4 colon cancer and you just switch to all vegetables. Mm-hmm. What is your thought process? I'm guessing your brain turns on and you try to explain how he cured himself. Yeah,
well, I think the main thing is you're cutting out a bunch of processed garbage.
He cut out all. Yeah, he won't even look at he can't even look at a McDonald's or what I mean, or anything in a can. Yeah, zero processed, zero.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I think that's a lot of the harm. Is this processed garbage? A lot of sugar. I mean, sugar's just added anything processed. Anything that's going to have a list of ingredients that someone else put together will have sugar in it because it's addictive. And the food companies know it's addictive. It makes things taste good, and it also gives a dopamine hit to the addiction centers of your brain. It is an actual drug that is actually addictive, and they put this stuff in everything. And so, when you get rid of that,
you're referring to sugar,
fructose specifically.
Fructose, okay.
Yeah. And so, that has been shown to give a dopamine response to the addiction centers of your brain. and just like cocaine, heroin, and meth. And there are MRI studies looking at that and showed that fructose kills the same areas of your brain as meth to the same extent as meth. All right. And it's broken down in your liver into the same byproducts as alcohol. So you get the same damage to your liver and your body as well. And which is quite surprising. So when you cut all that crap out, you're going to be in much better form. And just carbohydrates is, as you know, from Otto Warburg and Professor Seefried, cancers need 400 times the amount of sugar that normal cells do. And they cannot run on ketones. And so if you go on a whole foods, hopefully ketogenic diet where you're cutting out all this high octane carbohydrate and sugar filled garbage, you are going to seriously limit the available energy and resources to that cancer. Now, it could have been, even another step, because cancers also feed on glutamine. And so they feed on glucose and glutamine, and different cancers have sort of a different ratio of each. So if you're going on a sort of plant-based whole food diet, you're also not going to get, a lot of available proteins. That's not good for normal health. But if you're trying to starve your cancer of glutamine, might actually not be the worst thing you ever did. And so, going on a whole food diet of any description is going to improve your lot significantly, and just getting rid of carbs and sugar, especially for cancer, and potentially there's that benefit from glutamine. When we look at the cancer trials in humans and in mice, when you're able to significantly limit the available resources for cancers, the cancers will die out. And so if you can target both glucose and glutamine, cancers die. They just die. And Seefried showed this in animal models. They had 4 different groups. They had, and this is with brain cancer. And these glioblastoma brain cancers, 75% of their energy comes from glutamine. So they're actually very glutamine dependent, right? Other cancers are much more glucose dependent. So a ketogenic diet just on its own really works well. But a ketogenic diet in brain cancers actually work very well as well. But it works even better when you are able to target glutamine. So there are different drugs that can target glutamine, but they're not really approved for humans at the moment, especially for GBM. But in the animal models, you can use these things. So they gave these GBM mice, glioblastoma brain cancer mice. One group was just given normal chow that you just give to these mice. They died after about 8-9 days, right? Then you had the ketogenic group that lived twice as long as that, right? Calorie restricted ketogenic diet, twice as long. Then they had this medication that targeted glutamine, and just on its own, they lived around 3 times as long as the control group, right? So even longer than
8
the
days,
ketogenic
8 days, 20 days, 30 days.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Still
or 60 days or 24 days, something
Still
like that.
fucked.
Well, yeah, but these are mice too,
Right,
so
right.
their life cycle is a little shorter. But then they had the group that was ketogenic, calorie restricted, ketogenic, and glutamine restricting. None of them died.
Wow.
And they did imaging. They saw the brain cancer shrink, gone. And then eventually they sacrificed the animals so that they could look at the brains under a microscope. And they just found clumps of dead cells. There's no living cancer cells. It just killed them, because you've cut off the energy supply to these cells. The cells die.
Hey, isn't there some law that you personally, let's say you got, I'm sorry, Anthony, for saying this, but this is fiction. Let's say you got this brain cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And let's also say you were eating 12 Big Macs a day. Isn't there some law in the United States that you could do this on yourself as a study of one, like that you're allowed to take experimental drugs there's some wiggle room. Isn't there, Caleb? Isn't there some wiggle room where you can?
I think there is. I think there is a law that if you have a terminal illness, and you want to take some sort of experimental approach, that you can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question on if they could access Dawn. That's what the chemical that they used in these.
Oh yeah, they got
animal-
that in aisle 7 at Safeway. Dawn. It's the bottle
Yeah.
that's green with the lady washing her hands.
That's exactly it. Yeah, don't drink that. And but there are other things. There are other things that sort of interrupt glutamine and its use in metabolism. And so, and there's different, people can look into that if they want, but, I don't recommend people using things, self-prescribing things. Certainly I should be using these under the direction of a doctor, and just try to find one of these doctors that do practice, metabolic therapy, if that's what they want. It is really a second line, third line, fourth line, sort of last line approach at the moment in America, but it is being used. And so in like Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, they do use this, but it's basically people that have failed all the different available treatment options for different cancers. They say, okay, well, there is this thing, you could try it, and the case studies and case reports that they put out in a series of these things, 20 patients over the course of, any X number of years, they do really well. They do really well. And the only ones in this case series that they published in 2016 showed that everyone who stayed on a ketogenic diet survived. And the only ones in that case series at that point, at the time of the publication, that had died were the ones that just said, yeah, you know what, I can't do this. This doesn't fit with my lifestyle. And they quit, and they passed away, unfortunately, because you're literally feeding this cancer. You're giving it exactly what it wants, and that's not in your best interest. So I think you can do that in a lot of ways. It doesn't have to be in a carnivore diet. It's best done in a ketogenic diet, and hopefully if you can target glutamine as well. So I think you could do that. You could do that in a vegetarian diet. I don't think it'd be the most optimal. I don't think that's the best way you could do it. But I think you can do it. But you can also go on a vegan diet that's consists of Oreo cookies and heroin.
Right.
That's
right.
vegan, right? And so it really depends on what we mean by vegan, right? And so if you're limiting carbs and you're limiting sugar, then you're limiting fuel to cancer. Plain and simple. And so you can do that a lot of ways. A lot of it has to do with fasting as well. A lot of Seafried, in his human models and animal models, they measure what's called a GKI, or glucose to ketone index, that is a ratio of what your blood sugar is and what your ketone levels are in your blood. And they find that the better this is, so the lower your glucose and the higher your ketones, the better people do. And so if you can get your GKI under 2 or as close to 1 as possible, people do really well, and they seem to be able to just continue on and not succumb to these diseases. And a lot of people are curing them. A lot of these cancers that would be more glycolytic, meaning that they would be more reliant on glucose, well, they can respond very well. As another example of a colon cancer, I literally just had a guy on my podcast. I haven't published it yet. He's a French gentleman who lives in South Carolina, and he was vegan for 12 years. And then all of a sudden, bam, he's in his 40s and he gets colon cancer. He's like, how can this possibly be? I haven't eaten red meat in decades, and it's only red meat that causes colon cancer. Like, well, no, actually. And so he couldn't eat any plants, and he looked into it, and he didn't want to do the traditional therapy. He did not do chemo, radiation, or surgery. And he just said, okay, what am I going to do? He came across Seafried. He's like, okay, I'm going to do ketosis. And so he did a 21-day fast, just ate nothing, and only drank water for 21 days. After 21 days, his tumor was half the size that it was. That's crazy, right? And so it's proof of concept, at least for his case, right? And it was enough for him to keep going with this. And so he continued on a ketogenic diet. He found that he could not have anything with fiber because of this blockage and obstruction. Any bulk would just cause him excruciating pain, because the tumor was just sort of pressed up against a nerve, and it just was intolerable. And so he had to eat the most low residue foods, meaning that nothing came through his colon. He absorbed absolutely everything, and he didn't need to excrete any waste, which is what a carnivore diet is. If you just eat meat and nothing else, you'll absorb 98% of the meat that you eat, right? So almost nothing's going out. So he sort of defaulted into a carnivore diet, and he found that certain meats actually didn't agree with him either. And so he just ate red meat. So he went from being like a raw food vegan fat and overweight as a professional martial artist and instructor who trained 12 times a week, fat and overweight as a vegan. Now he's only eating red meat. And in 4 months to the day, his colon cancer was gone. He was stage 4 as well. And so it was just completely gone in 4 months to the day. And he was only eating red meat, So it's more about what you're not eating as much as what you are eating, because what you're not eating is what's actually fueling the cancer, right? So if you go back and you're eating all that garbage, that's going to fuel the cancer. It's not red meat that fuels the cancer. We know that because we have people just eating red meat and curing this stuff. But, it's not the only option, So if you don't want to eat meat, you don't want to eat red meat, you don't have to. It's really about,
I just want to be alive. I'm
going
to choose the be alive path.
Yeah.
Hey, is that guy religious?
I don't know. I didn't ask.
I asked because, when people make these decisions, there's a ton of pressure from the conventional wisdom in their family to take the Western route, right? So that was one of the interesting thing about this guy Chris's story. Like, everyone who loves you is like, "Are you fucking crazy? Go get the chemo." And this guy got like some word from his higher power being like, "Nah, dude, do your own path," which is just, I mean, it's ballsy.
Yeah.
It's ballsy, but so many success stories. Heidi Kroom, normally she asks if the guests are single. Today she has a different question for you. She says, what damages the mitochondria, and can you heal it?
There are a lot of things that damage mitochondria. Going back to the story I was saying when I was taking cancer biology, we were looking at all the different carcinogens in plants. Well, those carcinogens, they actually affect the mitochondria. So a lot of these different toxins, a lot of different genetic disorders, Tay-Sachs and things like that, like these things damage the mitochondria or cause a dysfunction of the mitochondria. So a lot of things it can, and there are a lot of toxins in plants that cause it. Now that was the whole thing. That was the whole reason why I stopped eating plants in the first place, because my professor, when we were talking about all this, we were just blown away that how he was saying that, how toxic plants were and how carcinogenic they were. And, I remember thinking in my head, I was like, but plants are still good for you though, right? And he just looked at us and he just said, yeah, I don't eat salads. I don't eat vegetables. I don't let my kids eat vegetables.
Oh, he doesn't let his kids eat vegetables either. No, I was going to ask you about that about kids, not kids either.
No, because he just said, he's like, plants are trying to kill you. Like, why would you eat them? They don't want to be eaten. It's kill or be killed in the wild for all stages of life, including plants. So that was the thing. I learned that later, that a lot of these carcinogens in plants and all these different toxins, they're carcinogenic because they damage the mitochondria. And just eating sugar and carbohydrates actually disrupts and deranges the function of your mitochondria. We know, sort of in reverse order, that people who go on a ketogenic diet for several months actually have much healthier mitochondria and much more mitochondria. And so you can go through, people know about, apoptosis and autophagy and things like that, where your body sort of scavenges these older cells that aren't working too well, but they also scavenge the organelles, the little organs inside of the cells, if you will. And so they sort of scrounge those up, clean those up, recycle them, make new ones. And they do that with the mitochondria as well. And so now you have better, newer, more functional mitochondria, and you also have more of them. So people in ketosis for a number of months generally have around 4 times as many mitochondria, and they work 4 times as well. So this is a huge bonus and boost to your body. And so there's something going on with just being in the wrong metabolic state, of having high insulin, having a bunch of sugar and glucose running around, causing glycation and so forth, that are damaging your mitochondria, damaging the functionality of this recycling process and the proliferation of your mitochondria as well. So there's a number of things that can damage your mitochondria, but a significant way of improving them is by being on a ketogenic diet, whatever that means to you. Like, it doesn't have to be a carnivore diet. I think that it's better if you are on a carnivore diet, or at least a very, very heavily fatty, meat-based ketogenic diet. But either way, just getting rid of carbohydrates and sugar and being on a ketogenic diet, we know that this heals and benefits your mitochondria significantly.
Heidi, I don't know how many mitochondria each cell has, but basically, as I recall, like there's a cell and in the middle is a nucleus and there's mitochondria all around, and they're basically just, they just produce energy. And like when they get injured, they die and go away. I don't think you don't heal the existing ones you have, but you make new ones. And you want to eat a diet that makes a lot of them and makes a lot of healthy new ones. Have you read this book? I can't remember, like I think this is the book like 5 or 10 years ago. I listened to this audio book. Oh shit. Sorry, Caleb. It's called The Lives of Cells by Lewis Thomas. Do you know this book?
No, I haven't read that book.
If I highly recommend this book. There's some shit in there about mitochondria, as I recall, that makes them seem like they're aliens. Like, I don't even think that they have the same DNA as the rest of your body. No. There's something very, very trippy about these cats living in us. But this is a really cool book, and you realize how important it is to make you want a very hospitable environment for these guys that are living in us. They're a trip.
Yeah,
they are.
Well, it really is a symbiotic relationship. It is thought that hundreds of millions of years ago, maybe even 500 million years ago, that certain cells sort of like ate another cell. So that's how cells work, right? They go and they eat other cells and things like that. And this one just ate this one, but this one stayed alive in there and actually helped, the workings of the cell. And so that became, eukaryotic cells. So there's a difference between eukaryotic cells and prokaryotic cells. These are just sort of the different sort of more ancient kind of cells and the more modern kinds of cells that can produce, multi-celled organisms with all a bunch of different functioning tissues. And so that's the thing, mitochondria are thought to be a completely different form of life early on. And then they sort of came in. Their DNA is different. It's passed down, from the maternal line. You get your mitochondria from your mom, but you get half of the mitochondrial DNA from your dad as well, because the mitochondrial DNA, it only has like 34 genes in the mitochondria itself. There is DNA in the mitochondria, but they actually used to have a lot more DNA, and they've actually planted that into the nucleus proper. And so there's actually a lot more mitochondrial genes that are in the nucleus. So you actually do get half of those genes from your dad. It's not only coming from your mom. And which I thought was sort of interesting. But yeah, the mitochondria, they do a lot more. There's a few hundred of them to over 1,000. So if you're in a ketogenic
in each cell,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's hundreds to over 1,000. And so, and people that are on a ketogenic diet are going to have, oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. So yeah, hundreds of thousands. And so.
Well, you don't even know if that's true. So we'll split the difference between you and this thing.
Well, yeah, I may have misremembered, but that was one of my memory. But in any case, they have a lot of these things, and you get a lot more when you're in ketosis. And the thing is that they don't just make energy. They actually are very mobile. They move around your cells. And so there's sort of this internal structure in your cells, these little basically pipes that go all over the place and sort of keep this internal structure together, just like your own bones would keep you together. And so these track along those little bones and pipelines, and they go down. So they go down to this area and this organelle, and they produce ATP to make this function. They're not just dumping out ATP and that's just free floating. It's targeted. And so they're going to certain areas, and they like in your brain, they're going to certain areas and they're releasing ATP so that this will release neurotransmitters at this time and in this way. And so they're actually the workers. You can think of it as like workers in a factory. They're going around actually using the different machines in your cell to get things going and get things moving. And so they're very, very important. And so if these things are slower and not really, doing, their proper job, they're not going to get to where they need to go in time. They're not going to produce as much energy. It's going to be $1, a day late and $1 short. And so that's going to have serious repercussions, especially if that's happening on a larger scale. I mean, look at, you have 100,000 of these things in a cell instead of 600,000, and the 100,000 you have are, slowly limping along and not producing a bunch of energy. And that's going on in all 2 trillion of your neurons in your brain. that compounds very, very quickly. There's a very interesting book from Professor Chris Palmer, who's a psychiatrist at Harvard. He wrote a book called Brain Energy. And really what it is, it's a masterclass on mitochondria and how it functions. And
can I read it and understand it, or do I have to be like you? Like, can like
no, it's written to the layperson. It's not a technical manual.
Okay.
And so, it's a masterclass on how these mitochondria work, and when they stop working, what that does. And he's specifically looking at, mental disorders and even schizophrenia, serious psychiatric disorders. And he's found in his practice at Harvard that he puts people on a ketogenic diet, their schizophrenia goes away. Right.
I so believe it. I so believe it.
Yeah. And so we dug in.
Tom Cruise was right? When he jumped on the couch and went crazy, he was right.
What did he say at the time? That he was loving?
I just remember he got canceled because he told 30 years ago, he told Brooke Shields, like, hey, get off the psychiatric meds and fucking work on your diet. And the world,
did he?
And the world turned on him. Yeah. That was like, didn't something like that happen, Caleb? Like he was like trying to, it's crazy whenever you try to empower people, you get in trouble.
Yeah. Well, like Gary Fettke and Tim Noakes.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, this is how you get better. You don't need a bunch of expensive drugs. Like, oh, absolutely not.
And Noakes was a carbohydrate addict. He was a world-class triathlete.
Yeah. And he was a world renowned sports physiologist and a sports medicine doctor. And he was one of the main proponents and probably the originator of, you need carbs to burn carbs, and you have to have all these carbs and all these sorts of things. And he says he feels really bad because he's like, I've been lying to people for 30 years,
right. I know, shamed her. It's like, hey, I'm giving you advice on how to get better, and now you shame someone.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I think of it as you're running towards a cliff, and it's a really foggy day, and you don't see that the cliff is coming. I'm more than okay if someone yells at me, Sevan, you fucking idiot, stop running. How dare you call me fucking idiot? And then I run off the side of the cliff. Like, I'm perfectly okay. Do whatever it takes to stop me. Tom, you're going to love the response to this, Tom. Dr. Anthony, what do you eat for breakfast?
Nothing usually. I just, But
Dr. Anthony, what do you eat for lunch?
Usually nothing.
Dr. Anthony, what do you eat for dinner?
Big ass steak.
And then what do you have for dessert, Dr. Anthony?
Glory.
Do you and then you just drink water, preferably rainwater?
Yeah, well, you would, if you get it. Just water. Yeah, just water and meat. So when I'm hungry, I eat meat. Then that's it, So if I'm,
you take a Tupperware with you when you're doing your residency? Do you have a Tupperware with like chopped up pieces of steak and you throw a couple in?
I have, like when I'm able to like actually get to the gym and work out. Yeah, there you go. I like that one. That was what I did. It was just like, what does the caption on that one says? If you look up on it. Scroll up.
Heap of meat with melted butter. Follow me for more recipe ideas.
Yeah.
Great recipe.
Yeah. So so I would do that. Like if I were to be hungry during the day, I would do exactly what that picture shows. I'd cut up a steak and or a couple steaks, and I'd put that into a container and bring it with me and just eat it. Like if I'm working out a lot, I'll be more hungry. I'll have a bigger demand for food and nutrients. So I'll probably be hungry twice a day. Normally, when you're eating high density nutrition, you don't need to eat as much or as often. And so if I eat a big meal at night of fatty meat, like a ribeye, and I eat until I'm full and I eat until I naturally comfortably want to stop, then I'm usually not hungry for another 24 hours. So I wake up in the morning, I feel great. I just get up and go. It saves me a lot of time. I don't have to like make breakfast and try to get something to eat before I'm running out the door. During the day, I don't have to stop for lunch, which is very convenient because normally my days are just crazy and I don't have time to stop for lunch. And so, afterwards I can go to the gym and work out, and I'm not just crashing because I'm just dying of hunger. And then I go home and I eat amazing steak. If I'm working out a lot, I will want more. And so maybe I'll have to sort of bring a steak with me and sort of eat that during the day when I can. But the plus side on that is that I get a lot out of my workouts, and when I'm able to feed myself and give my body as much food as it needs, like I put on muscle very, very easily. And so I can put on weight, just lean muscle mass very, very easily if I'm able to get enough food. But normally I'm good with just eating once a day.
Are you aware that you are on a different agenda than other people? I don't know if agenda is the right word, but like smokers, the way we operate, I used to smoke cigarettes. We move from place to place looking for a place to smoke cigarettes. That's how all of us operate. So, I'm going to drive over to Anthony's house and then we're going to go hit a round of golf. While I'm driving over there, I'll have a cigarette.
Right.
Then he doesn't like me smoking in his car. So then I'll have another cigarette once we get out of the car and we're at the golf course. And coffee drinkers do the same thing. They plot their day, and carbohydrate addicts do it too, whether they know it or not. Their whole day is plotted around these treats. So since you don't have those, you're on a different, you're bouncing off. You react to different things. Like, are you aware of that? Like when you're with regular people, like, oh shit, these people are summoned by different spirits than me.
Yeah, no, I have noticed that, and I really like that. I've noticed that so many people are just, really beholden to, just meals and eating all the time, and they
alcohol, whatever their thing is, whatever spirit's telling them, you must come to me, come.
Yeah, and it's just, so many people are reliant on on even surrounding their social activities with food, going to breakfast, brunch, lunch, dinner, coffee, drinks, snacks, dessert, all these sorts of things, because we're just eating all the time. We're like, well, how do we socially interact? Well, I guess we can eat a meal together. We can do this together. So now you can't do anything social without incorporating food or drink now. I'm so happy to be outside of that. I when I'm hanging out with people, we go and do things, like I'm not beholden to that. I don't need to eat 4 times a day. I don't need to snack and carry something in my bag or a power drink or whatever, because, I just go. And so, I have so much more free time. I figure I have several hours of the day that I'm not thinking about preparing or eating food, and all that time is mine. And so I can be much more productive and just enjoy my day more. And when, I want to go out with someone, I just say, they say, oh, let's go to lunch. Let's go to this. Well, why don't we go on a hike? Why don't we go to the beach? Why don't we go, do something, and so I just, I do things, and I do see that. And I see how people are so, beholden and enslaved by their hungers and desires. And not that they're, horrible drug addicts or anything like that. It's just, that's just normal. You have to eat.
Yeah. Anthony, let's go out for a drink. And really what I'm saying is like, hey, do you have a drinking addiction like I do? And do you want to go take care of it together? I mean, let's just be frank. I mean, I have friends who, when they're around, I'm excited because I know we're going to fucking drink a lot. Like, I just know that. I have friends that when I know they're around, we're going to play a lot of Frisbee, and I get excited. I just know that.
Yeah.
I know when I'm with my boys, I'm going to laugh a lot. So I want to be with my boys. But yeah, it's a trip. What about this and the kids? So I introduce my kids to everything very early. Like I would give my kid, are you okay on time?
Am I what? Sorry.
Are you okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Like, so I would give my kid just like before, like they were breastfeeding, right? And I would give them just while my family was sitting around eating steak, I would just give him a piece of steak and I would let him teeth on it, right? And the conventional wisdom was not to let your kid eat honey or peanut butter, but I gave that shit to my kid way early, way early. And later on, I found, because it just didn't make sense to me. Like, what if your kid's allergic? I'm like, no, that doesn't make any sense. And later on, I find out the studies show that the more you introduce your kids to peanuts and honey, the less likely they are significantly to have allergies to it later in life. And basically, that's kind of the CrossFit methodology that Greg Glassman said, put an organism through stress and it adapts. So I knew, like, hey, I mean, to a point of safety, right?
Yeah.
What about this thing? So would you say that do you agree that like you shouldn't give you, and by the way, all the kids that I know whose parents raised them vegan, something's wrong with the kids. Like their hair doesn't look like my hair. Their eyes don't look like your eyes. They don't have this, something's missing. There's like a dimness or a dustiness or a brittleness to them.
Yeah.
But could it go the other way too? Like, that you only gave your kids meat and that they wouldn't be exposed to enough adversity that maybe vegetables offer or honey offers or nuts offer, and then it would make them weak to it as they're older?
Well, I mean, we don't have any data one way or the other on that. So as far as allergies are concerned, I'm not too sure, but I do know that we are carnivores, and that's what all the best evidence shows, that we and our ancestors have been eating meat and exclusively meat for nearly 3 million years. And there's a ton of data on that. And we can go into that if you like, but it's very interesting and it's very compelling. And, so if you are going to be, if you want to develop properly and develop into the best that that your body can develop into genetically, you have to give your body exactly what it's designed to eat and exclude all the things that are going to cause harm, because these defense chemicals do cause harm. And so, maybe it's like, okay, well, you can build up a defense to something. Well, you can build up a tolerance and a defense to smoking and nicotine and alcohol and cocaine.
Right.
Is that good for a 2-year-old to do that? Well,
Right.
it builds that up for some reason down the road. I don't know. I think that it's probably best to just eliminate out toxic elements that do cause harm and only focus on the things that are giving extremely good nutrition. To the vegan side of things, I think that that's quite harmful to kids. There was a group, I think it's called, I think it's Spec or something like that. It's an Italian pediatrician group, and they came out with a position statement on vegan and vegetarian diets, and they said, look, these are deplete and deficient in very basic fundamental nutrients. Like, you cannot call something a good diet if it doesn't even have basic nutrition for life. And so putting a kid on this is tantamount to child abuse, because there are not enough nutrients in there, and they're not even getting into the whole plant toxin side of things. It just doesn't have the requisite nutrients for life. And so you have to take supplements, and some people don't take supplements. There are a number of examples around the world where vegan parents have been put in jail because their kids have died on a vegan diet. Damn. And people are being conned into thinking that a vegan diet is not only acceptable and okay if you don't like the thought of eating animals, and you can get an equivalent amount of nutrition, but they're saying that it's better, that this gives a benefit, and this is the best thing you can do for your kid. And these people are killed, literally their kids are dying. I think that's just absolutely just appalling and shameful. And so, you cannot get basic nutrition. You have to take supplements to just survive, right? If you have to take supplements, then by definition, your diet is deficient. How can a deficient diet be what we evolved on? That makes no sense. So that just goes right out the window for me.
So you don't take any, you don't take any supplements?
No.
No.
You shouldn't have to.
No creatine?
No, there's tons of creatine in red meat. There's tons of creatine in
no
meat.
Vitamin C?
No, don't need it. No.
What if you get sick? Will you just maybe get some vitamin C and just take some extra if you get sick?
I really have not gotten sick, though. I've gotten COVID twice. I was sick for a day, and then that was it. During that, I did take zinc and vitamin D. And I think magnesium a couple times, just because, a lot of studies said that was
Right.
good. So I just did that. And I took an aspirin, because of the
Right.
whole clotting side of things. And that was it. No, I don't. So I don't take vitamin C or anything like that. And that was really the only time I've been sick in years and years and years.
And it was just a day.
It was just a day. And then I was sort of tired for a week after that.
Yeah. I mean, and how long ago was that?
I think I got the first one maybe like 8 months ago, something like that. And then I got, sort of another round of it just like a month ago, something like that.
Yeah, about a month ago, something blew through California. that was crazy. My whole family, not me, but my whole family was sick for like, it seemed like 2 months, like just taking turns getting sick.
Oh wow, yeah.
The kids, it doesn't matter to the kids. They just throw up and then go outside and play. Like they don't care. But to the
Yeah.
adults, it kind of works them.
Yeah, yeah. I felt fine, especially with the second time around. I was much less knocked back by it. I was just sort of, just feeling a bit. I felt like I had a cold, really, and
Yeah, that's what it seems like with the kids. They just
yeah.
get a fever. And,
Yeah.
and no, none of my family well, me and my wife are, as kids, they gave us all sorts of drugs, but none of my kids have any injections or any vaccines, and they just we don't do that. But, it is interesting to see how differently they handled it than the rest of the world, or because most of our cohort is, supplemented. And so we have this study we get to see of our kids versus the other kids. And I'm glad we've chosen the path of not taking drugs. And another thing, you'll find this weird. Another thing is like, so none of my kids had any added sugar until they were over 2 years old. So for your first birthday and your second birthday, you don't get like cake or you don't get ice cream. My kids have never drank juice once in their life. They've obviously never had soda. They're 2 6-year-olds and an 8. We've probably done some things that would make you roll over in your grave, but for the most part, we're probably in the top 1% of 1% of 1%. Like, but now my kids, they can't handle added sugar. So if at Halloween they have 1 or 2 pieces of candy, they start to feel really, really bad. And I did have a family come over to my house one time, and the lady for dessert, she pulled out a bag of Oreo cookies for her kids to feed them at my house. And I go, "What are you doing?" I go, "You know better than this. Why are you feeding your kid Oreo cookies?" And she goes, "Well, I'm like inoculating them from sugar because I don't want them like to, if they eat no sugar now, that when they get older," I swear to God, she told me this, when they get older, if they won't be able to handle the sugar.
Right.
I'm like, dude,
yeah.
How the fuck does that logic work? How about you just never give them? How about they just not be? It's kind of like the joke you made earlier. Like, should you inoculate your kids from heroin and nicotine, like by introducing it at a young age? Like what?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that's what I think about anything that can be considered harmful. Like, just keep it away.
Like peanuts and honey.
That's it. Yeah. Just
okay.
Don't ever.
So I was laughing at her and you were laughing at me. I'm like, this dumb bitch gave her kid sugar. And you're like thinking in your head, this dumb dickhead gave his kid peanuts and honey.
Well, but I mean, the thing is though, we're all doing the best that we can,
right.
with what we have. And
you have a great disposition around that too. I don't know how you stay so calm. You have a great disposition. I mean, you're in the battle on the front lines when it comes to food.
Yeah. And you do get a lot of pushback. I get a lot of people just losing their mind, just cussing at me. You can't be a doctor, this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, well, you're definitely not a doctor, so I don't really need to, you to qualify me. And but people can get quite upset. Like you were saying, just people just lose their mind about just saying, hey, don't eat carbs. And it's like, how dare you, sir? It makes no sense. They have no problem saying, oh, you shouldn't eat meat. You shouldn't eat red meat and all that sort of stuff. There's no good studies, none, that show that red meat's bad for you. In fact, the University of Washington just published a meta-analysis and literature review looking at all of these so-called studies saying that red meat was bad and cause of cancer, something like that. They found that these were weak studies. They were lazy science. They were garbage. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of junk science in medicine. So many of the studies are just junk science. They are worthless. And most of those are in the nutritional medicine side of things. And most of those say that meat's bad and vegetables are good. They're junk. They're garbage. They need to be thrown out. And and so on this weak nonsensical evidence, they say, don't ever eat meat, don't ever eat fat, all that sort of things. The thing that we've evolved to eat, the thing that we've been eating for literally millions of years. And yet, cancer and heart disease are on the rise as we're eating less and less and less of this stuff. And yet they're still blaming it on the meat and the fat, something that we've eaten for forever. How can an ancient diet cause a new disease? Makes no sense. People don't.
That's a strong line right there. How does the ancient diet cause new disease? That's such a strong line.
Yeah, but it really doesn't make sense. And yet they have these very weak studies, and a lot of these studies have actually been proven to be fraudulent. The saying that cholesterol cause heart disease from the USDA in 1977. That was a position of the USDA. That changed everything. And so everyone's basing all of this stuff on that. Well, the University of California, San Francisco Medical School actually published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, one of the top medical journals in the world in 2016, actual internal memos from the sugar company back in the 50s and 60s, detailing how there was evidence and studies showing that sugar caused heart disease. And they're like, we need to cover this up. And so they're in their own words, they detailed how they paid off 3 Harvard professors to falsify data and publish fraudulent studies to make it appear as if cholesterol caused heart disease when it was really sugar, and to exonerate sugar. And one of those professors was named head of the USDA, and he was that guy who authored and published the 1977 declaration saying that cholesterol caused heart disease. It was all con. It was all garbage. And so, you know that now. That's a matter of record. This is not up for debate. You have to throw it out. Even the Framingham study.
The Framingham study. How about like crazy, right?
Yeah. So that was the thing. I was taught the Framingham study my first year in medical school. It's just like, this 30-year perspective, cohort study. They're looking at all these people, following for decades. And, the American Heart Association, which was tied up with another one of these paid shills of the sugar company, Ansel Keys, who's just a complete monster. I everything that guy's ever done, it should be thrown out because the guy's a known crook. The American Heart Association, they misreported the Framingham study. So what I was taught was actually what the American Heart Association put forward, which is not what was actually published in the Framingham study. So they said that the Framingham study showed that the more higher your cholesterol levels were, the higher your heart disease rate was, and stroke and cardiovascular risk, right? In fact, the Framingham study showed the opposite. So there's
especially in women who were over 65, right? That's the part I remember. Actually, women who were over 65 who had the highest cholesterol lived the longest.
Yeah.
And they had taken a correlate and turned it into a cause and fucked everyone.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. So they misrepresented it. Yeah. They said it was exactly the opposite. Yeah. And because it was the American Heart Association, this made it into textbooks. This was in my textbook in medical school, right?
You paid,
so that's insane.
$50,000 that year to learn that.
I know, dude, more than that, unfortunately.
To push that lie.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but thankfully, probably one of the most important things that I did learn in medical school, certainly that year, was one of my professors said, by the time you graduate medical school, everything you learn here will be obsolete. You have to keep learning and keep learning and keep looking at studies and keep educating yourself, and so that's what I've been doing. And that thankfully I've been able to sort of see that a lot of these things that we've based
you canceled, boy. You better watch out, Anthony.
Yeah. And so, a lot of these things that we learn in medical school, a lot of these things we take for granted, when you look back at the origins of them, they're based on very flimsy evidence, if not outright lies, or just a guess. The whole thing is like, well, if you eat a lot of meat, if you eat a lot of protein, that's bad for your kidneys. That was a guess. They say that when you eat a lot of protein, you cleave off the amino group, the nitrogen group from the amino acid, right? And then you turn that into ammonia, then you turn that into urea, and then you excrete urea. So they think of urea as just a waste product. We just need to get rid of this stuff, right? And it builds up in your system, you're trying to get rid of it. So if it builds up, that means that it's harder on your kidneys. You're putting your kidneys through stress, and your kidneys aren't working as well. That's actually not true, because when we're in times of stress, when we're in times of infection, our urea goes up as well, but our creatinine stays down. And creatinine is actually the marker of how well your kidneys are functioning. So, if your kidney was just not functioning properly, and they would both go up, right? But no, one goes up, the other one stays down. And what actually turns out to be the case is that urea is one of your body's strongest antioxidants. And so when you're in a state of stress and infection, you want to increase your urea so that you can help fight off and soak up all these free radicals. So it's actually an improvement. You're actually doing better for yourself. But that was the guess, was that you're increasing your urea. That will be harder on your kidneys. You don't want to do this if you're in kidney distress, right? Well, when they actually did the studies, they found the opposite. They found that people that had a higher protein diet actually improved their kidney functions, right? So,
Crazy.
once you, but so many but that's what the literature shows.
Right.
The actual studies show that higher protein diets improve kidney function. And yet I still know doctors today who still say, no, you can't eat a lot of protein. Like, why? You clearly haven't looked at the literature. It's just things get repeated so many times, they just believe it.
Maybe doctors, maybe you're not a doc. Maybe you're obviously a doctor, but maybe you're also something else. Like, are doctors by nature, the definition of that word doctor, just docents of the medical literature, and which distinguishes them from scientists who are maybe the creators of medical literature? Well, and by the way, going back I want to add this for anyone who thinks that he's exaggerating or speaking in hyperbole about medical journals. You can go right online and you can find Robert Smith or other editors or CEOs of the American Journal of Medicine, the New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet, who have openly come out and say, just straight up, now it's a war in the journal industry. They will just straight up say, you have to assume everything in the medical journals, all of them, even the best ones, are fake. You have to start with the assumption that it's a lie and it's fraudulent. That's known now. That's not like fucking tinfoil hat shit. Anyone can Google that and find that now. It's crazy. It is. It's become nuts. But is it doctors? Like, you're clearly like, the doctors are like, hey, prescribe this, and you're going back and looking at the study. But is that really? Are doctors supposed to do that, or have you just kind of gone the extra mile?
Doctors are supposed to look at the evidence. It's all supposed to
be. They're supposed to vet it.
They are, and a lot of them don't. A lot of them read the book and they read the guidelines. A lot of them will read the studies as well, but they'll read specific studies in their field, say. But they won't necessarily read all of them. There are certain ones that when you're going through residency, they say these are the hallmark studies in this field. These are the ones you need to know about. But that's curated by whoever's teaching the program and getting you ready for your board exams, right? So the people who write the board exams have a lot of influence in that, because you need to know certain things, in order to pass your boards. And so you're going to read certain studies. So you're sort of getting cookie cutter educations, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully it teaches you that you need to read studies in general. We are supposed to be, most medical schools would teach you to practice evidence-based medicine. But a lot of people, unfortunately, think that evidence-based medicine means following the guidelines. That's not what I mean. The guidelines
you have
are
to in California by law. There's some rules on you in California now that if you go against the guidelines for COVID, you're fucked.
Yeah, well, that's here too. Yeah,
that's scary, right?
Yeah,
and you're not allowed to read. It's basically you're not allowed to make your own assessment.
No, which is bad. I mean, that goes against everything that is medicine. Like, you need to be able to have autonomy in your practice. And, because who are these people saying, maybe they're right, maybe they're not, but, maybe they're not, right? And so the guidelines are written by bureaucrats. And politicians. They're not written by scientists. So when you have, like,
who were bought for by pharma, by the way, and I don't mean that like as in some conspiracy or some bad thing. It's the same way that, like, I buy my kids, like I pay for my kids' tennis lesson and they do it. Pharma gives the bureaucrats money to run for office and they do their bidding. I'm not even saying it like it's like some nefarious shit, but
I mean, it's not even unknown. It's not a conspiracy.
Right.
You can follow the donors' records and things like that. They're all public record.
How about 60 Minutes? Did you see that thing? Leslie Stahl. Did you see this thing that came out last week?
No, I don't think so.
So they did a story on a drug. I think it's called Wegovy, WEGOVY. And they're basically saying when they say, hey, these doctors we're interviewing work for Wegovy, and the largest sponsor of this show is the pharmaceutical company that makes Wegovy. And what we're telling you is that 12-year-olds who are fat should get on this med, and if this med doesn't work by the time they're 13, they should go under the knife. It's fucking 60 Minutes. I don't know if you remember as a kid, that was like our parents, like God.
Mhm.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, that was like, the most
It's just
respected,
yeah.
it's like very high integrity
They're
sort
just
of
open
show.
about it. They don't even they like, by the way, these scientists work for the drug company and the drug company sponsors the show. Okay, let's proceed.
Yeah. That's crazy. They were just open about it. They're saying the quiet part out loud,
Yes.
And yeah. And I guess they think maybe if they're open about it, then people won't suspect that they're, bought and paid for. Even though they're telling you, "Hey, I'm bought and paid for." Oh, that must mean they're sincere and that this is coming from the heart, you know?
What about cooking meat? How much should are people overcooking meat? I noticed your meat was pretty red.
I just like the taste of more rare meat.
Mhm.
I like a bit of a sear on the outside, but I like it pretty raw in the inside. And that's just, again, my tastes have just sort of refined and changed. And so I just like that taste a bit more. Um, I think, you do lose some nutrients when you cook meat. That's true. Um, but you also make some more bioavailable. You make the proteins more bioavailable as well, and so you get a bit of a trade-off. Um, I think that the jury's a bit out on what you have to do. There's certainly people that cook meat, well done, and have been doing a carnivore diet for years and years and years and do just fine. I slow cook meat all the time, or do like a smoker for like ribs and brisket. That's going to be very, very well done, and that's fine too. The way I think about it is humans have been cooking meat. There's evidence in the fossil record that we've been cooking meat for at least 800,000 years.
Wow.
That's 500,000 years before Homo sapiens existed, right? So we've been cooking meat for a long, long time, and there's other evidence and suggestions that people suggest that actually we've been cooking meat for 1.5 million years, and maybe even had longer than that, like 2 million years. Because when the ice sheets came down, when the ice ages started about 2 million years ago, humans didn't run away down towards the equator. They went up into it, right? Hard to do if you don't have fire. So that's the argument that some paleontologists make, is that like Dr. Bill Schindler, he made that argument. He said, like, they aggressively went into the ice sheets. That's difficult to do if you don't have a reliable source of heat. And so he thinks that we probably had fire long before that, but we can reliably say that we had fire for at least 800,000 years. In fact, there's evidence that we had extremely evenly cooked meat as well, meaning that we might have had like, some sort of rudimentary oven sort of ability 750,000 years ago. So we've been cooking meat for a very, very, very long time. So, whatever happens, whatever sort of nutrients that we lose or gain by cooking meat, I think that we've long adapted to that. I think that that's probably okay. Cats are not the same. There are studies with Dr. Pottinger back in like the 30s and 40s who looked at cats, and they just did not do as well on cooked meat versus raw meat. It's still meat, but it's the cooked meat they were not doing nearly as well. And then each generation it got subsequently worse. They had lower bone mineral density, and after 3 generations, like their heads were deformed, their brains weren't developed properly, and their bodies were smaller, getting all these broken bones and things because their bones were so soft. And then they stopped being able to breed at all. They couldn't have they couldn't have a 4th generation. And the raw meat cats were just thriving the whole way through. And then they found that if you started feeding the 3rd generation of the cooked meat cats raw meat, you could get them a little better, and you could get them producing offspring again. But they didn't just go all of a sudden develop into what the raw meat cats were doing the whole time. It took 4 generations before they could get back to where the raw meat cats were the whole time. So there's this huge epigenetic effect that actually lasts generations to eating the wrong thing. So it's something that if we were that sensitive to it, you should sort of notice it. But I don't think that we are. But
What would be interesting is
you know,
to do a study where you give someone a pound of raw meat and who am I to make up the study? But some study that showed the difference in defecation between people who eat raw meat and people who eat cooked meat.
Well, like how much it goes out.
Yeah, like people
how
who
much you
eat raw
absorb.
meat poop less.
Yeah.
Would be my hypothesis because they absorb more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be.
I when I did the carnivore, and I wouldn't by far not strict about it now, but now after talking to you, I think you're going to jumpstart me again. But I couldn't believe it was all unicorn poops for just months, like just toilet, like it became unnecessary to use toilet paper, and I became so regular. Everything got better in my life, just everything. Yeah. I did start getting a little cold in my fingertips and my feet, and that's why I started moving away from it. That's actually how I came across Paul Saladino. Mm-hmm. What about women in carnivore?
Yeah, it optimizes their health too. I mean, it just, humans are we're all one species, so males and females, and so like the female of any species are going to eat the same as the male species. Adults just eat the same food. Mammalian children will drink milk, but once they are weaned from milk, they eat the exact same thing as every other adult. And so males and females, they might have a different amount that they eat, and because men are usually bigger, not always. But that's it. Like female lions and male lions, they eat the same thing, and so. We are one species, and that's another argument that people make. Well, different people have different optimal diets and things like that. That cannot be the case if you're saying
really
that we're all one species. No,
can't really.
No. Think about it this way. See if you can think of any examples in nature where two members of the same species have different optimal diets.
So Venus flytraps everywhere. They just like flies. They just eat flies. That's what they do. They just eat.
Yeah, well, that's it.
And cats everywhere. All the different cats, the panthers, and all. Like you never see there's no like some weird panther somewhere that just eats fruit.
No,
they all just.
But the thing is, though, is you. First of all, I can't think of any feline that's not an obligate carnivore, but you could have maybe a feline that sort of ate different. So there's different primates that have different diets, right? So a gorilla is very, very clearly herbivorous, right? Chimpanzee is.
What's that mean? They eat plants and animals.
No, just herbivorous. So just herbivore.
Okay.
Yeah, so
like the only protein they get is they accidentally eat an insect. Other than that, they just eat plants.
Yeah. Well, okay. but that's the interesting thing is that herbivores actually get the majority of the nutrients that they absorb is still fat and protein, because they're eating a bunch of plant material, but that's not what they're absorbing. Because they can't absorb it. No vertebrate animal can break down fiber. So what they're actually doing is they're actually feeding the gut bacteria, right? So it's the bacteria in their gut that eats the fiber. And so that's what it subsists on. And then they have waste product is short chain fatty acids, which are actually 100% saturated. And so even gorillas that just eat green leaves, they get 70% of their calories from saturated fat because that's the waste product of these bacteria. But then the bacteria die off and the animal breaks those down and absorbs those for protein. So even a gorilla that just eats those leaves, they're still getting 70-30 fat to protein.
Wait a second. This is fucking crazy that I've never heard this before. You're telling me that like when I eat food, my body uses that food to make energy. Mm-hmm. You're telling me that there's a creature living inside of the stomach of gorillas that eats the food they eat, and that this creature shits what it shits out is actually what feeds the gorilla.
That's it.
Holy
all herbivores.
Shit.
Yeah. So all herbivores. That, Caleb?
No.
Hey, so wow. I had no fucking idea. That's fucking brilliant. Yeah. You're feeding this creature inside you, this bacteria. It eats the food that you ate, and then it takes a deuce in you, and that's your nutrients.
Yeah.
Wow, that is fucking brilliant. Talk about a homeboy. Yeah. I had a guy on the other day, had the most insane body, this 53-year-old jiu-jitsu practitioner, and he's vegan, but he eats based on like to maintain his gut biome. And I was telling my wife I was having you on, and she said, ask him about that. She's like, because that's the whole thing with that's why the plant people are so big on plants, because they said, You need the plants for the bacteria.
I mean, if you're a gorilla,
You're just like, yo, just tell my wife she's full of shit.
No, so the thing is that our understanding of the gut biome is very poor at the moment. It's getting better, but it's not even, well, it's certainly not proven that having a certain gut biome changes your health, right?
Okay.
It could very well be that the things that you're eating affect your health and just happen to bring about a certain gut biome. People on a carnivore diet, and there have been studies done, show that they have very diverse microbiome, and like all the ones they say, well, these gut microbes and things like that, having more of these are better. People that eat a high meat diet and a carnivore diet have more of them. People who eat more carbohydrates and fiber, they feed certain gut microbes that are more associated with autoimmune diseases and multiple sclerosis and things like that. Also feeding like SIBO, so small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. There are actually studies that have been published just this past year that actually show that people going on specifically a carnivore diet can cure SIBO just through dietary measures. The argument that some people make for fiber is they say, well, you have to eat fiber because you have to feed these certain microbes, actually very similar microbes to the ones in a gorilla's gut or a cow's rumen, and they make butyrate, right? So these are those little fatty acids that that these bacteria will crap out, and people say, it's like, well, that's what your enterocytes need. They need this butyrate. That's what fuels your gut. Well, first of all, if you don't eat any fiber, your intestinal lining doesn't just shed off and die, and you don't just die of a necrotic bowel, right? Because I haven't had fiber in a decade. So
Yeah.
Where's that?
Yeah.
And so, but the thing is it makes butyrate. Well, we know that you're eating is a sort of fiber, that there's certain bacteria that can break that down, but it's not like enough to like fuel you. It's not enough to really do anything for you. And what people forget to realize is that one of the main ketone bodies is butyric acid, right? And so when you're in ketosis, you make tons and tons and tons of butyrate, right? So you will already feed your gut lining, your enterocytes. Also butter gets its name from the high quantity of butyrate in it, right? So you're not going to starve your intestinal lining by not eating fiber, in fact, quite the opposite. We used to have, and so this is just, you look at that comparative anatomy, right? So different primates, right? So there are a bunch of different primates. Some primates are omnivores that eat sort of, mixed, like a chimpanzee. Chimpanzees eat other chimpanzees and monkeys. They hunt and they kill and they eat.
That's not cool. That's not cool.
It's pretty gnarly too, because they'll like eat them alive. I've seen videos of this. It is not okay. And Jane Goodall actually saw all this as well. When this started coming out in the last sort of decade or so, they're like, wow, these things are just wild. And then she's just like, oh yeah, I saw all of that. But she was just like, if I came back and reported that, all of my work would have been thrown out. They wouldn't have believed me. And so because it was too far past what people thought about chimpanzees. So apparently she like actually documented all of that behavior, but just didn't say anything about it because she didn't think people were ready for it. But yeah, so they're just, they hunt and they eat meat. And then there are other primates, like the oldest examples, oldest living primates are just pure carnivores as well. So there is a mix. And so, going back to what I was saying before, you can have different primates that have a different optimal diet, but you're not going to find two gorillas that have different optimal diets. You're not going to find two zebras that have a different optimal diet, or two lions. You know what I mean? But just the comparative anatomy side of things. Look at gorillas, look at chimpanzees. They're what's called hind gut digesters. So like a ruminant animals, more foregut digesters. They have these multiple stomachs and all these different sorts of things, and so they digest food in different areas. But primates are hindgut digesters, and like koalas are hindgut digesters as well. So they have a blind pouch very long cecum. It's like this 4-foot long cecum, and it's just sort of a blind outpouching of the gut, and it just sort of sits there, and that's where all this fiber will pack in. It just stuffs in there, and it just sits there slowly breaking down. Well, that's in us. That's our appendix, just like a little finger-sized organ, right? Because it's vestigial. It's lost that ability, right? Because millions and millions and millions of years ago.
Do you really believe that they're in vestigial shit?
Well, so the thing is that
I'm not judging you, by the way. I heard that term recently, and I'm like, there's no fucking way there's anything in me that's vestigial. Fuck you. I need it all.
Yeah. So the thing is, it can absolutely have a use. What I mean that's vestigial is the functionality of breaking down fiber.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. No. So, your body is very efficient. You're not gonna spend energy maintaining an organ or a system that doesn't need to be there, right?
Brandon Waddell, I don't call my finger-sized organ my appendix. I know. Let's give Dr. Anthony some grace. He's in Australia. They're different there.
So the major function of this cecum, which is really what it is, was to break down fiber. So we've lost that ability, right?
Okay.
So
okay.
It may have other sorts of abilities.
Well, that explains. If I need to take a deuce, I can literally just eat. I can just go to the store, get a clamshell of anything, arugula, it doesn't matter, and I can take handfuls of it and make it into ball and eat it. And the store that sells them is 2 miles from my house. By the time I get home, I have to run to the bathroom, and I just take one beautiful salt. Like, it just plunges me, which makes sense because I have no ability to process it, right?
You have no ability to process it. You cannot break it down.
Yeah.
And it's causing irritation. Your body's trying to get it out,
Well, not me. I'm Armenian. Nothing irritates me.
Yeah.
I can eat. I'm like a human trash compactor.
Yeah. But that's the thing. You're exactly right. We cannot break down fiber. We cannot use it nutritionally. And that was actually the argument for why we should eat it back in the 80s. They said, hey, you want to lose weight.
My mom used to tell me, or tells me.
Yeah. Well, that's it. There was the celery diet. You burn more calories just moving this celery through your body than you're going to get from the celery. So that was the argument for eating vegetables back in the 80s, was that you don't get any nutrition from them. So you can just eat a lot of them. It's just free food. It's free food because it doesn't have any calories. It doesn't have any nutrition. And so you won't get fat, right? And it'll make you feel like you're full because it has all this bulk in it because of the fiber. But you can't break it down. You can't use it, and you don't get any calories from it. Isn't that great? I was like, okay, well, why don't you just eat a plastic bag?
Right. And now we know that plants are poisoning you.
Well, that's it. I mean, and you shouldn't just eat something unless it provides you benefit. You shouldn't eat something because it doesn't provide you benefit. That makes no sense. Most animals in the wild are struggling to get enough to eat, as opposed to just eating dirt. So it just fills them up. So, oh my God, it's throwing them fat. Like, that's crazy, And so, but people got worse. The obesity rate tripled since those recommendations came out. Because it actually doesn't make you lose weight. It actually makes you gain weight. It makes you put on inflammation. It makes you, damages your body in multiple different ways. So we have all of these different autoimmune diseases and chronic diseases that have all come about and all increased exponentially since we started eating less red meat and less fat and eating more fruits and vegetables, and of course, a lot more carbs and a lot more sugar. This is all very, very damaging to our bodies. And we're told that it's a health food. We're told that, eating a bunch of fiber and eating all this sort of stuff, that's really good for you and you'll lose a bunch of weight. No one loses weight.
Right.
They don't lose weight. They feel like garbage.
Right.
Their health goes to shit. And, and then they, and they don't actually lose weight. There are people struggling with their weight for decades, and they're doing all the things that they're supposed to do. I was talking to Dr. Sarah Zaldivar. She has a PhD in nutrition, and she was having health issues and she was having difficulty losing weight, and she has a PhD in nutrition. And she was like, I was doing everything exactly the way it was supposed to, straight by the book. Is like, I'm a PhD, I should know exactly how to do this. And she was just getting worse and worse and worse. And eventually she was just like, okay, this has to be wrong. And so she started looking into it. Now she's, a big proponent of a carnivore diet, and, reversed all of her health issues, trimmed up, is in, very good shape now. And so, this is what, the physicist Richard Feynman said it doesn't matter how brilliant your theory is, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with experiment, it's wrong. Right. So it doesn't matter what all the textbooks say. It doesn't matter whatever,
You mean consensus
nonsense.
isn't always right?
Yeah. Right. And yeah, it's almost as if, reality, wasn't begotten by vote, by popular demand. There are just certain things that are right and certain things that are wrong. And just because there's a study that says something's right or wrong does not actually make it true. It just means that that's a piece of evidence that you can look at. But then you put it into practice and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It's wrong. Just throw it out. It's wrong, And that's exactly what these things have shown themselves to be, is wrong. They said fat and cholesterol are bad for you. Well, we know that was fraudulent. And even if we didn't know that was fraudulent, we know that the experiment run on the American people and people around the world, hundreds of millions of people, now billions of people around the world, showed that it gave the exact opposite results, right? We reduced red meat and cholesterol by 30%. We increased fruits and vegetables by 30 and 40% respectively, increased grains and sugars even more than that. What were the results?
I thought you were talking about a different experiment that was just run on billions of people.
Well, that's the thing. We have a lot of experiments run on us. Yeah. And you have to look at the evidence, and you have to protect yourself and make your own decisions. This is why it's so important for people to be able to make their own decisions, because for the previous experiment, when they said everyone change how you eat, we did exactly what they said we should do, and heart disease rates tripled, right? So how can you say that cholesterol causes heart disease when you reduce cholesterol and heart disease rates increase, right? If anything, you can say that that's protective. And in fact, we have studies now in the last decade with hundreds of thousands of people showing that it is protective. The Journal of the American College of Cardiology actually published in 2020 a large meta-analysis looking at all the data to do with saturated fat, and found that, actually it has no relationship between saturated fat, no negative relationship between saturated fat and heart disease. In fact, they found an inverse relationship between saturated fat and stroke. So people who ate less saturated fat, higher rates of stroke. More saturated fat, lower rates of stroke, right? And then there were studies looking at LDL cholesterol, and again, found no negative association with LDL cholesterol and heart disease. In fact, they found an inverse relationship. So people had higher LDL cholesterol, had less heart attacks, and vice versa. Okay, and this was another large meta-analysis, published in major journals. So, and there's so much more. There's so much more. I did a debate with sort of 5 other cardiologists. I was the only non-cardiologist on the board. And there were 3 of us that were arguing that we got cholesterol completely wrong and we were correct. And then there were other people that were sort of the traditional mindset. And so I just made my case, and I made a video after that, just called the facts about cholesterol and heart disease. And just went through all these studies and all the history and everything like that. And so it's very, very, very robust now. That, well, first of all, we know that cholesterol never was a cause of heart disease. That's just a historical fact. But now we have studies showing that it's actually protective. It's actually good for you. Every single cell in your body is made out of cholesterol. 8th grade biology, I saw that in a textbook. And I remember all the membranes, cell membranes of our body are all made out of cholesterol. I remember thinking, I was like, how can cholesterol be bad for you? We are cholesterol. How can it be bad for us? We're literally made out of cholesterol. Our brains are made out of cholesterol. The myelination around your axons are cholesterol. You don't get enough of this stuff, your brain atrophies, and it can't propagate signals as fast. You get dementia. You get age-related degeneration of your brain. So every single one of your hormones, well, most of them are made out of cholesterol as well. There's about 27 intermediary hormones between cholesterol and testosterone. Every single one of those is its own unique individual hormone that has its own purposes in your body. Every single one is derived from cholesterol. Cortisol is derived from cholesterol. Estrogen, progestogens, mineralocorticoids, glucocorticoids, everything made in your adrenals above your kidneys. All of these things are all made from cholesterol. How is cholesterol this toxic substance? That makes no damn sense. we are so reliant on cholesterol. It is such an important molecule. And to vilify it and say that it was bad for us when we've been eating fat and cholesterol for millions of years makes absolutely no sense, especially when heart disease just did not exist. We didn't even know about it. We didn't track it, before the mid 1900s. It makes no damn sense.
Can I off top? Are you having fun on the show?
Yeah.
Is this a good show?
Oh,
Okay, good.
yeah.
All right, good. That was good. All right. Well, then we're done. Hey, I hope that there was some value to being here. Like, I gotta have you back on. I feel like the guy who's like already begging for, like, I can't even play cool. I can't be like, hey, we went on a date. I'm not gonna call her for a day. I already want so much more of you. I'm watching the questions just pour in, and we just can't get to all of them because my bladder is going to explode. And I've had you for 2 hours and 34 minutes. Listen, this is my takeaway from this podcast. I know most of you are believe in really hardcore accountability, personal responsibility, taking control of your life. Go check out this guy's stuff. Watch a couple of his videos. While you're on the assault bike with your headphones on, break that sweat. And I think you would be making a huge mistake if at some point in your life you didn't at least use the diet that he prescribes to himself to do a reset on your whole entire being. So they have these diets that are called elimination diets. I recommend doing that. Do an elimination diet and make this and use Dr. Anthony Chaffee's diet as your foundation. It's just one item you're going to eat. It's just meat and water. It's a good place to start. See how you react. Set a goal for yourself, 30 to 60 days, and begin from there, and treat yourself like a lab rat and see how it feels. I also know that most of the listeners are big proponents that the way to make life better is to get rid of shit. You don't buy another Harley, you get rid of the one you have. We all know that the more shit you get rid of, the freer you are and the better you are. And so I think this is just an awesome place to start. And I will definitely try my best in the next couple of months to get Dr. Anthony back on. I know people have tons of questions. Everyone wants to know about eggs and, eating semen and all the weird fucking questions you guys ask. And how does he really live without caffeine? And I know all the shit you guys want to say, don't. Okay. You guys want to know if a diabetic can start all that. I appreciate you. Oh, you broke up. See, look at, I talked about getting you off and you're gone. He froze. Is he frozen for you?
He's frozen.
He froze.
It's a good shot of him, though.
Yeah, it's the Australian government just shutting him down. I don't know if you can hear us, Dr. Anthony, but you froze. Oh, what were you going to say? You froze.
I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah. Am I back to you guys? I can hear you anyway.
Yeah. You're back to us.
Yeah. I was just saying when you said the diabetes things, yeah, the people with diabetes can absolutely do it. Diabetes just goes away when you go on a carnivore diet, or even just a ketogenic diet. That's we've actually been able to push that, and people like Gary Fettke and others have actually gotten that into the guidelines for the Australian diabetes approach to treatment. Yeah, so now that's mainstream. So now everyone can absolutely prescribe this to their patients because it's in the mainstream diabetes guidelines. So and carnivore is the ultimate ketogenic diet. If you're not obviously eating fruit and honey and carbs and things like that, if you're doing meat-based ketogenic diet, ketovore, I guess you could call it, that is really, really, really strong. I was just in Costa Rica. We actually just filmed a docu-series called Reversed. It's like the third season, and it's all about reversing diseases with a carnivore diet. And a major one is diabetes. We had a lady who... That's
a cool show. What's the name of that show?
It's called Reversed.
Reversed.
Yeah. And
cool. When does that publish? That's published already? That's...
No, so we just finished filming it. And so it'll be sort of out in the next sort of 5-6 months. And but there's 2 other seasons. So they did... Do
you have a mailing list? I want to be on your mailing list. Like, are you going to send out a mail being like, hey, Reversed is coming out? Or do you have a mailing list?
I don't. I should probably set one up. I've only really sort of gotten into the whole social media podcast sort of thing just in the past year, and so I'm still sort of figuring it out. But
all right,
yeah. But yeah, so it's a third season. So there are 2 other seasons that they use a ketogenic diet approach. Now they're doing going full on carnivore. And one lady, if people know about, diabetes, her HbA1c, which is a marker of basically how high your blood sugar is for the last 3 months, was 13, which is massive. It's supposed to be around like 5.5. It's really, under 6 anyway, is optimal. Hers was 13, so it's massive. Okay, so high blood sugar is what kills diabetics. These sugar molecules physically fuse to other molecules. It's called glycation. So it's a non-enzymatic fusion between these sugar molecules and your other molecules, and they damage them and disrupt them. So it basically kills you from the inside. And so this is why your insulin goes up. It's a protective measure. That's not a normal thing. Your body's just trying to protect you from this high blood sugar, try to get this down. And then high insulin disrupts your metabolism in a lot of different ways. You can cause a lot of different problems and disease pathways from there. So she was able to get her HbA1c down from 13 down to 5.1 with a carnivore diet in a couple months, which is just unheard of. Type 2 diabetes is taught to be a progressive illness. It's a chronic disease. It's a progressive disease. It only gets worse. You mitigate it with diet, lifestyle, and medication, but it only gets worse. That is what is taught. And yet you reverse it in 2 months.
Yeah.
There are people that are on insulin that can come off insulin, in a matter of months. Not everyone, but there are people that can do it. And
Right.
but everyone will improve dramatically.
Aaron C., I will give you the final I respect the benefits of only meat, and I understand it, but fruit is nature's gift. And Aaron, I understand also monogamy, but your sister and your best friend are the nature's fruits. So thank you for that. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Dr. Anthony, you the man. And
Thanks,
I hope